Sometimes, history pivots on the smallest of accidents. On June 28, 1914, in the sunlit streets of Sarajevo, Archduke Franz Ferdinand's car took a wrong turn and rolled to a stop just steps away from 19-year-old Gavrilo Princip. Only hours earlier, his assassination attempt had failed, and now, fate delivered the target to his doorstep. 2 gunshots cracked the summer air, setting in motion a chain of events that would topple empires and plunge the world into the First World War. Picture this: a quiet nursery in Hopewell, New Jersey, 1932. The world's most famous aviator, Charles Lindbergh, returns home to discover his 20-month-old son missing from his crib. A crude wooden ladder leans against the house, and a ransom note demands $50,000, an astronomical sum during the Great Depression. The crime captivated America for over 2 years. Imagine the soft rustling of newspaper pages as millions followed every development. The scent of fresh ink filled living rooms across the nation as families gathered around their radios, hanging on every whispered update. Bruno Hauptmann, a German immigrant and carpenter, was eventually caught when he used marked bills from the ransom money. But here's what's fascinating. This single tragedy transformed how we protect children forever. The Federal Kidnapping Act, known as the Lindbergh Law, made crossing state lines during a kidnapping a federal crime. The case also birthed our modern media circus. Reporters trampled evidence, photographers climbed trees for shots, and the trial became America's first trial of the century. Close your eyes and imagine how one family's heartbreak quietly rewrote the laws that still protect children today. Isn't it remarkable how tragedy can plant seeds of protection that bloom for generations? Picture the early morning mist rolling across Buckinghamshire Fields in August 1963. A Royal Mail train carrying $2.6 million, equivalent to about $50 million today, chugs along the London to Glasgow route. The rhythmic clatter of wheels on tracks creates nature's own lullaby. 15 men, led by Bruce Reynolds, had spent months planning what would become Britain's most famous heist. They tampered with railway signals, forcing the train to stop at a bridge where they quietly overpowered the crew. No guns, no violence, just precision timing and theatrical masks. Listen to the gentle whisper of wind through wheat fields as the robbers transferred 120 mail bags into waiting trucks. They vanished into the morning like ghosts, leaving behind only tire tracks in the soft earth. What's truly fascinating is how this crime changed everything. Britain revolutionized its banking system, improved train security, and modernized police investigation techniques. The Postal Investigation Department was completely restructured. Most of the gang was eventually caught, but their story became legendary, inspiring countless films and books. Even today, people debate whether they were criminals or folk heroes. Breathe deeply and consider how sometimes the quietest crimes echo the loudest through history. It's June 17, 1972, and 5 men are quietly picking the lock of the Democratic National Committee headquarters. The security guard's flashlight beam dances across darkened offices as he discovers tape holding doors open, a small detail that would topple a presidency. Frank Wills, the night watchman, noticed something odd about those pieces of tape. The gentle squeak of his rubber-soled shoes echoed through marble hallways as he called police. Within hours, the burglars were caught with cameras, bugging equipment, and crisp $100 bills. What started as a third-rate burglary unraveled into the greatest political scandal in American history. Imagine the soft scratch of reporters' pens as they connected dots between the burglars and President Nixon's re-election committee. The investigation revealed a web of political espionage, secret recordings, and abuse of power. Nixon's own voice, captured on White House tapes, ultimately forced his resignation, the first presidential resignation in U.S. history. This break-in transformed American politics forever. It created new transparency laws, changed how we view presidential power, and taught us that in democracy, no one is above the law. Close your eyes and marvel at how 5 men with flashlights and tape quietly changed the course of a nation. Captain Alfred Dreyfus, a Jewish artillery officer in the French army, was quietly going about his duties when his world shattered. In 1894, he was accused of selling military secrets to Germany based on a single piece of evidence, a torn document found in a wastebasket. Picture the rustle of heavy military coats as officers gathered for his court-martial. The trial was conducted in secret, fueled by anti-Semitic prejudice rather than evidence. Dreyfus was convicted, stripped of his rank, and exiled to Devil's Island, a brutal prison colony off the coast of French Guiana. For years, he languished in solitude while the real spy, Major Ferdinand Esterhazy, walked free. The soft scratch of pen on paper would eventually save him when novelist Émile Zola published J'accuse, an open letter exposing the military's cover-up. France literally tore itself apart over this case. Families stopped speaking, riots erupted, and the nation split between Dreyfusards and anti-Dreyfusards. This affair transformed modern justice. It helped establish the presumption of innocence, influenced international human rights law, and showed the world how individual courage can challenge institutional corruption. Rest peacefully knowing that sometimes the quietest voices of truth eventually become the loudest calls for justice. You are standing on Griffin's Wharf in Boston Harbor on a crisp December evening in 1773, where the gentle lapping of waves against wooden ships would soon become the soundtrack to revolution. Imagine the soft creak of ship masts swaying in the harbor breeze as roughly 50 colonists, disguised as Mohawk Indians, quietly boarded 3 British ships. The scent of salt air mingles with the earthy aroma of loose tea leaves as they systematically emptied 342 chests of precious East India Company tea into the dark waters. Samuel Adams and the Sons of Liberty had planned this carefully. No other cargo was touched, no one was harmed, and they even swept the ships clean afterward. The only violence occurred when someone tried to steal tea. His fellow protesters promptly threw him overboard too. Listen to the gentle splash of tea leaves hitting the water, 10,000 pallers worth, floating away like autumn leaves. The harbor turned brown for weeks, and the sweet smell of tea lingered in the air. This single night of quiet rebellion changed everything. Britain responded with the Intolerable Acts, which only united the colonies further. The Boston Tea Party became the spark that ignited the American Revolution. What's beautiful is how they turned destruction into creation, transforming a tax protest into the foundation of a new nation. Close your eyes and imagine how the soft splash of tea leaves in Boston Harbor echoed across an ocean and awakened a revolution. Picture this. John Profumo, Britain's Secretary of State for War, meets 19-year-old Christine Keeler at a pool party. The gentle splash of water and tinkling of champagne glasses mask the beginning of a scandal that would shake the British establishment to its core. What made this more than just another affair was that Keeler was also involved with Soviet naval attaché Eugene Ivanov. During the height of the Cold War, this created a security nightmare. Imagine the soft rustle of classified documents potentially passing between bedsheets and embassy briefings. The story unraveled slowly, like a thread pulled from a tapestry. Keeler's friend, Mandy Rice Davies, became famous for her perfectly delivered response when told a lord denied their affair. Well, he would, wouldn't he? When the truth emerged, Profumo lied to Parliament, a fatal mistake. His resignation brought down Prime Minister Harold Macmillan's government and ended the Conservative Party's 13-year rule. This scandal transformed British politics and media forever. It shattered the gentleman's agreement between press and politicians, ushering in the modern era of investigative journalism. Rest easy knowing that sometimes the most private moments create the most public consequences, quietly reshaping the world we live in. You are traveling back to 1920s America, where the soft rumble of Model T Fords mingles with the distant sound of oil derricks pumping black gold from the earth. Warren G. Harding's presidency seemed as smooth as silk until investigators discovered that Interior Secretary Albert Fall had quietly leased government oil reserves to private companies. The Teapot Dome Reserve in Wyoming and Elk Hills in California, strategic fuel supplies for the U.S. Navy, were secretly handed over in exchange for personal loans and gifts. Picture the gentle scrape of shovels breaking ground as Fall used his newfound wealth to improve his New Mexico ranch. The soft lowing of cattle and the whisper of wind through prairie grass masked one of the biggest corruption scandals in American history. What's fascinating is how this scandal was uncovered. Thomas J. Walsh, a quiet Montana senator, spent years methodically following paper trails. The soft scratch of his pen across legal documents eventually exposed bribes totaling over $400,000, millions in today's money. Fall became the first cabinet member in U.S. history to be imprisoned for crimes committed while in office. The scandal contributed to Harding's stress and possibly his sudden death in 1923. This affair transformed American politics, leading to new ethics laws and oversight procedures that still govern federal officials today. Breathe deeply and reflect on how the quiet persistence of one senator proved that in democracy, patience and truth often triumph over power and corruption. You are entering the quiet English countryside of 1912, where the soft morning mist clings to ancient hills and the gentle tap of archaeologists' tools echoes through time. Charles Dawson, an amateur archaeologist, claimed to have discovered the missing link between apes and humans in a gravel pit near Piltdown, East Sussex. Picture the careful brushstrokes as he unveiled skull fragments that seemed to solve evolution's greatest puzzle: a human-like brain with an ape-like jaw. The scientific world embraced Piltdown Man with gentle enthusiasm. Museums displayed the fossils, textbooks were rewritten, and Britain proudly claimed to be humanity's birthplace. The soft scratch of pens across academic papers spread the news worldwide. The hoax was finally exposed in 1953 using new chemical dating techniques. The skull belonged to a medieval human, the jaw to a modern orangutan, artificially aged with iron and chromic acid. The gentle hiss of chemical tests revealed decades of deception. This scandal revolutionized scientific methodology, introducing rigorous peer review and verification processes that protect us from similar frauds today. What's remarkable is how one man's quiet deception in a country gravel pit temporarily rewrote the story of human existence. Close your eyes and consider how sometimes the biggest lies are told in the smallest whispers. You are settling into a 1950s living room, where the soft glow of a television screen illuminates families gathered around their most prized possession, trusting in the magic of the airwaves. Charles Van Doren, a handsome Columbia University instructor, captivated America on the quiz show 21. Week after week, families watched him answer impossibly difficult questions, his brow furrowed in apparent concentration as he earned $129,000, a fortune in 1956. Picture the gentle hum of television tubes warming up across the nation as millions tuned in religiously. The soft rustle of potato chip bags and the clink of soda bottles provided the soundtrack to what seemed like pure intellectual triumph. But it was all a performance. Producers had secretly given Van Doren the answers beforehand, coaching him on how to hesitate dramatically and wipe his brow for effect. The soft whisper of scripts being passed in darkened backstage areas masked television's first great betrayal of public trust. When contestant Herbert Stemple revealed the fraud in 1958, America's innocence shattered like glass. Congressional hearings exposed how multiple shows were rigged, and the quiz show era ended virtually overnight. This scandal transformed television forever, leading to strict regulations and oversight that govern broadcasting today. It taught us that not everything we see on screen is real. Rest peacefully knowing that sometimes the most valuable lessons come from the gentlest betrayals of trust. You are walking through the crisp autumn air of Chicago in 1919, where the soft crack of baseball bats and the distant roar of crowds drift from Comiskey Park during what should have been the sport's finest hour. 8 Chicago White Sox players, led by first baseman Chick Gandil, quietly agreed to lose the World Series against the Cincinnati Reds. Picture the gentle thud of baseballs hitting gloves as they deliberately missed catches and strikes, their hearts heavy with the weight of betrayal. The conspiracy was masterminded by gambling kingpin Arnold Rothstein, who allegedly paid the players $100,000 to throw the series. Imagine the soft rustle of cash changing hands in hotel rooms, while fans outside celebrated what they believed was pure athletic competition. Shoeless Joe Jackson, the team's star player, became the scandal's most tragic figure. Despite playing brilliantly and denying involvement, he was banned for life along with 7 teammates. A young fan's heartbroken plea, "Say it ain't so, Joe," became baseball's most famous lament. The scandal nearly destroyed America's pastime. Baseball responded by appointing its first commissioner, Judge Kennesaw Mountain Landis, who ruled with an iron fist to restore public trust. This betrayal transformed professional sports forever, establishing the integrity measures and oversight that protect athletic competition today. Close your eyes and reflect on how 8 men quietly broke America's heart, but in doing so, helped build the foundation for the games we love today. You are strolling through the sun-drenched streets of Sarajevo on June 28, 1914, where the gentle clip-clop of horse hooves on cobblestones mingles with the soft rustle of summer leaves overhead. Picture this. A 19-year-old Serbian nationalist named Gavrilo Princip sits quietly in a cafe, believing his mission has failed. Earlier that morning, his fellow conspirators had bungled their attempt to kill the Austrian Archduke. The soft clink of coffee cups and murmured conversations fill the air as Princip contemplates going home. Then fate intervenes. The Archduke's driver takes a wrong turn, stopping the car directly in front of Princip's cafe. Imagine the young man's surprise as history literally drives up to his table. 2 shots ring out, gentle as firecracker pops in the summer air. What's remarkable is how this moment of pure chance changed everything. Within weeks, Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia. The soft scratch of telegraph keys carried mobilization orders across Europe as alliances activated like dominoes falling. This single act by one nervous teenager triggered World War I, reshaping the entire modern world. 4 empires collapsed, new nations were born, and the 20th century's trajectory was set. The assassination created the League of Nations, redrew global borders, and established the principle of national self-determination that still guides international law today. Close your eyes and marvel at how one wrong turn on a quiet Sarajevo street quietly unleashed a century of transformation. You are walking through Berlin on a cold February evening in 1933, where the soft glow of street lamps illuminates snowflakes drifting like ash from the darkening sky. Picture the majestic German Parliament building, the Reichstag, standing proudly against the winter night. Inside, the soft echo of footsteps on marble floors would soon give way to the crackle of flames that would burn democracy itself. Marinus van der Lubbe, a young Dutch communist with poor eyesight, set fire to the building on February 27th. The gentle whoosh of flames, consuming curtains, and wooden paneling lit up the Berlin sky like a sinister aurora. Within hours, the building's great dome glowed against the darkness. Adolf Hitler, recently appointed chancellor, arrived at the scene with remarkable speed. The soft murmur of his voice carried across the crowd as he declared this an act of communist terrorism. By morning, he had convinced President Hindenburg to sign emergency decrees suspending civil liberties. What's chilling is how quickly democracy crumbled. The Reichstag fire decree, issued the next day, allowed mass arrests of political opponents and suspended freedom of speech, press, and assembly. The gentle stroke of Hindenburg's pen effectively ended the Weimar Republic. This single fire gave Hitler the excuse he needed to consolidate power and establish his dictatorship. Rest peacefully knowing that even in democracy's darkest moments, the lessons learned help us recognize and resist such threats today. You are settling into a quiet newsroom in 1971, where the soft hum of typewriters creates a mechanical lullaby as journalists work late into the night, unaware they're about to receive the scoop of the century. Daniel Ellsberg, a former Defense Department analyst, had spent months photocopying 7,000 pages of classified documents detailing America's secret involvement in Vietnam. Picture him working by lamplight, the gentle whisper of pages turning as he revealed how 4 presidents had systematically misled the American people about the war. The soft rustle of manila envelopes being passed to New York Times reporters carried the weight of democracy itself. These documents showed that the government knew the war was unwinnable while publicly claiming victory was near. When the Times began publishing excerpts, President Nixon's administration sought an injunction. The first time in U.S. history, the government tried to prevent a newspaper from publishing. The gentle tap of judges' gavels echoed through courtrooms as the case rushed to the Supreme Court. The court's decision in New York Times Company v. United States established that the press's right to inform the public trumps government secrecy, except in cases of immediate national security threats. This leak transformed American journalism, strengthening the First Amendment and establishing the principle that democracy requires an informed citizenry, even when the truth is uncomfortable. Breathe deeply and consider how one man's courage to reveal the truth quietly strengthened the foundation of free speech for generations. You are stepping into the gaslit parlors of Washington, D.C. in early 1877, where the soft scratch of quill pens across parchment decides the fate of American democracy in backroom negotiations. The presidential election between Republican Rutherford Hayes and Democrat Samuel Tilden had ended in chaos. Tilden won the popular vote and appeared to have enough electoral votes, but disputed returns from 3 southern states left the outcome hanging by a thread. Picture the gentle tick of grandfather clocks in smoke-filled rooms as political leaders crafted what became known as the Compromise of 1877. The soft murmur of voices haggling over America's future mixed with the clink of brandy glasses and the rustle of silk curtains. In exchange for the presidency, Hayes agreed to end Reconstruction and withdraw federal troops from the South. Imagine the soft thud of military boots marching away from southern statehouses, leaving newly freed slaves without protection. This stolen election effectively ended the Reconstruction era and ushered in decades of Jim Crow laws and racial segregation. The compromise that made Hayes president also abandoned millions of African Americans to systematic oppression. The deal transformed American politics, establishing the pattern of Southern Democratic dominance that would last until the Civil Rights Movement. What's haunting is how this quiet bargain in Washington parlors echoed through generations, shaping racial relations for nearly a century. Close your eyes and reflect on how sometimes the most consequential crimes happen not in dark alleys, but in the corridors of power. You are entering the hushed scriptoriums of medieval monasteries, where the soft scratch of quill pens on parchment creates history's most enduring forgery, one careful letter at a time. Sometime in the 8th century, An unknown clerk crafted a document claiming that Emperor Constantine had given the Pope temporal authority over Western Europe. The gentle whisper of ink drying on vellum masked what would become the most influential fraud in Western history. Picture monks carefully copying this donation of Constantine by candlelight, the soft glow illuminating words that claimed the Pope owned not just spiritual authority, but entire kingdoms. The sweet scent of beeswax candles and the earthy aroma of vellum filled scriptorium air as the forgery spread across Christendom. For centuries, popes used this document to justify their power over emperors and kings. The soft rustle of papal bulls and royal decrees echoed through medieval courts as the Church's temporal authority grew. The fraud wasn't definitively exposed until the Renaissance, when humanist scholars like Lorenzo Valla applied new textual analysis techniques. The gentle scrape of scholarly pens revealed anachronistic language that proved the document's medieval origins. This forgery shaped European politics for over 700 years, influencing the relationship between church and state throughout the medieval period. What's remarkable is how one clerk's quiet deception in a monastery cell helped define the balance of power across an entire continent for centuries. Rest easy knowing that truth, however delayed, eventually emerges from history's shadows. You are walking through the red clay roads of rural Alabama in 1932, where the soft hum of cicadas mingles with the distant sound of church bells, masking one of medicine's darkest betrayals. The U.S. Public Health Service launched what they called the Tuskegee Study of Untreated Syphilis in the Negro Male, recruiting 399 African American men who had syphilis, but were never told they had the disease. Picture these men, mostly poor sharecroppers, trusting government doctors who promised free health care for bad blood. The gentle creak of wooden examination tables and the soft click of medical instruments provided the soundtrack to 4 decades of deception. Researchers offered free meals, transportation, and burial insurance while secretly studying how syphilis progressed when left untreated. Even after penicillin was discovered as a cure in the 1940s, the men were never treated. The soft rustle of medical charts documented their deteriorating health while doctors deliberately withheld life-saving medicine. Whistleblower Peter Buxton finally exposed the study in 1972. The gentle tap of newspaper printing presses carried the story nationwide, sparking outrage and leading to the study's immediate termination. This betrayal revolutionized medical ethics, establishing informed consent requirements and institutional review boards that protect research participants today. The survivors received settlements, and in 1997, President Clinton issued a formal apology. Close your eyes and remember that the strongest safeguards often emerge from our deepest failures, protecting future generations from similar harm. You are riding the rails across the American frontier in the 1860s, where the rhythmic clatter of train wheels on steel tracks carries the sound of progress and the whisper of corruption that built it. Picture Oakes Ames, a Massachusetts congressman, quietly distributing shares of Crédit Mobilier stock to his fellow legislators. This construction company was building the Transcontinental Railroad while systematically overcharging the government by millions of dollars. The gentle scratch of pens signing fraudulent contracts mixed with the distant sound of hammers striking railroad spikes as workers built America's first coast-to-coast railway. What they didn't know was that their honest labor was funding one of the Gilded Age's greatest swindles. Crédit Mobilier charged the Union Pacific Railroad, which it secretly controlled, inflated prices for construction work. The soft rustle of banknotes being passed between politicians and businessmen occurred in Washington, drawing rooms while workers died building tracks across hostile terrain. The scandal broke in 1872 during the presidential election, exposing how railroad barons had bought congressional influence. The gentle tap of telegraph keys spread news of the corruption across the nation. 2 congressmen were censured, careers ended, and public trust in government plummeted. But the scandal also sparked the first serious campaign finance reform efforts. This affair taught Americans that rapid economic development without oversight inevitably leads to corruption that enriches the few while betraying the many. Breathe deeply and consider how the rails that connected a continent were built on both the sweat of honest workers and the quiet crimes of powerful men. You are standing on the deck of a merchant ship in the Caribbean Sea in 1731, where the gentle lap of tropical waves against the hull masks the beginning of one of history's strangest conflicts. Captain Robert Jenkins was trading peacefully when Spanish Coast Guards boarded his vessel, the Rebecca. During the search, they accused him of smuggling and, in a moment of brutal theater, cut off his ear. Picture the soft splash of Caribbean waters as Jenkins supposedly threw his severed ear overboard, though he later claimed to have preserved it in a jar. For 7 years, Jenkins kept his story quiet, but in 1738 he appeared before Parliament, dramatically producing what he claimed was his pickled ear. The gentle murmur of shocked parliamentarians filled Westminster as Jenkins recounted his ordeal. This grotesque display inflamed British public opinion against Spain. The soft scratch of quill pens across declarations of war echoed through government offices as Britain used Jenkins' ear as justification for conflict. The War of Jenkins' ear merged into the larger War of Austrian Succession, involving most of Europe's great powers. What started with one man's mutilated ear became a global conflict lasting 9 years. The war established British naval supremacy in the Caribbean and strengthened colonial trade networks that would fuel the Industrial Revolution. What's fascinating is how one preserved body part in a jar quietly became the excuse for reshaping European power dynamics. Close your eyes and marvel at how history's smallest provocations sometimes trigger its largest consequences. You are entering the opulent halls of Versailles in 1785, where the soft whisper of silk gowns across marble floors masks a scandal that will help topple the French monarchy. Picture Marie Antoinette, already unpopular for her extravagance, unknowingly becoming the victim of an elaborate con. Jean de Valois Saint-Remy, claiming noble blood but living in poverty, devised a scheme involving a 647 diamond necklace worth today's equivalent of millions. The gentle clink of diamonds being arranged by court jewelers provided the soundtrack to this deception. Jean convinced Cardinal de Rohan that the Queen secretly desired the necklace but needed him to purchase it discreetly. Using forged letters and an actress impersonating Marie Antoinette in moonlit garden meetings, Jeanne orchestrated the Cardinal's participation. The soft rustle of fake correspondence and the whispered promises of royal favor created an elaborate house of cards. When the scheme collapsed, the Cardinal was arrested, the necklace disappeared, and public opinion blamed the Queen despite her innocence. The gentle tap of pamphlets printing scandalous accusations spread anti-royal sentiment across France. This affair destroyed what remained of royal credibility just years before the Revolution. The soft murmur of coffeehouse conversations turned French public opinion decisively against the monarchy. The scandal demonstrated how perception often matters more than truth in politics, a lesson that reverberates through modern democratic discourse. Rest peacefully knowing that sometimes the most innocent people become history's most consequential victims. You are walking through the misty hills of medieval Italy in 756 A.D., where the soft chime of monastery bells masks the creation of a political arrangement that will shape European politics for over a millennium. King Pepin the Short of the Franks had just defeated the Lombards who threatened Pope Stephen II. Picture the gentle thud of diplomatic pouches being delivered to papal chambers as Pepin made an extraordinary gift: vast territories in central Italy that would become the Papal States. The soft scratch of scribes recording this donation of Pepin echoed through monastery scriptoriums as the document that created the Pope's temporal kingdom took shape. The sweet scent of vellum and ink mingled with frankincense as clerks formalized the Church's new earthly power. This arrangement solved a pressing problem: how to protect the Pope without making him dependent on the Byzantine emperor. The gentle rustle of papal robes now carried the weight of political sovereignty as well as spiritual authority. For over 1,000 years, the Papal States influenced European politics, controlling trade routes, forming alliances, and sometimes waging war like any secular kingdom. The soft footsteps of papal diplomats echoed through courts from London to Constantinople. The donation wasn't fully reversed until 1870, when Italian unification finally ended papal temporal power, confining the Church to the tiny Vatican City. This medieval crime of opportunity, taking advantage of military victory to create lasting political change, shaped the relationship between spiritual and temporal power throughout European history. Close your eyes and consider how one king's generous impulse quietly created a sovereignty that outlasted most empires. You are descending into the cool stone cellars beneath the Houses of Parliament on November 5, 1605, where the soft drip of moisture from ancient walls mingles with the gentle scrape of wooden barrels being arranged in darkness. Guy Fawkes, a Catholic convert and explosives expert, crouches quietly among 36 barrels of gunpowder, enough to obliterate the entire Parliament building and everyone inside. Picture the earthy scent of damp stone and the metallic tang of gunpowder filling the air as he makes final preparations for what would have been history's most spectacular act of terrorism. The plot began with Robert Catesby, a charismatic Catholic gentleman who believed that killing King James III and his government would restore Catholic rule to England. The soft whisper of conspirators meeting in shadowy taverns carried plans that would have changed the course of British history forever. But someone sent an anonymous warning letter. The gentle rustle of parchment being unfolded in candlelight saved the kingdom as authorities searched the cellars, finding Fawkes with matches in hand, ready to light the fuse. What's remarkable is how this failed plot shaped modern Britain. It established November 5th as Guy Fawkes Night, created lasting anti-Catholic sentiment, and strengthened parliamentary democracy by making it a symbol of resilience against extremism. The conspiracy also influenced how we think about terrorism today. The idea that a small group of determined individuals could threaten an entire government. Close your eyes and imagine how one struck match in a basement could have quietly erased centuries of British political evolution. You are gliding through the marble corridors of the Vatican in the late 1400s, where the soft echo of silk slippers on stone floors masks the gentle clink of poison being poured into golden goblets. Cesare Borgia, son of Pope Alexander VI, perfected the art of elimination through carefully orchestrated dinner parties. Picture the warm glow of candlelit banquets, where the gentle tinkle of crystal glasses and the soft murmur of Latin prayers provided cover for the most sophisticated poisoning network in Renaissance history. The Borgias used a mysterious white powder they called cantarella, possibly arsenic mixed with other substances. The sweet aroma of wine and the savory scent of roasted meats masked the bitter taste of death, as enemies of the papal court quietly expired days after seemingly pleasant social gatherings. What made these crimes so effective was their elegant simplicity. Victims would return home feeling fine, only to develop mysterious fevers. The soft rustle of physicians' robes and the gentle scratch of medical prescriptions couldn't save those marked for elimination. These poisonings consolidated Borgia power across Italy, eliminating rival cardinals, troublesome nobles, and wealthy merchants whose properties the family coveted. The quiet deaths cleared the path for Cesare's military conquests and his father's papal ambitions. The Borgia legacy transformed papal politics forever, establishing the precedent that the Church could wield temporal power through any means necessary. Their methods became the template for political assassination that influenced Machiavelli's writings and shaped European statecraft for centuries. Rest peacefully knowing that even history's most elegant criminals eventually fade, while their lessons help us recognize evil disguised as sophistication. You are entering the gas-lit halls of French military intelligence in 1896, where the soft scratch of pen nibs across official documents creates evidence that will frame an innocent man and expose the rot within a nation's institutions. Major Marie-Charles Esterhazy, drowning in gambling debts, had been selling military secrets to Germany for years. But when suspicion fell on Captain Alfred Dreyfus instead, Colonel Hubert Henry saw an opportunity to protect his spy network through elaborate deception. Picture the gentle scrape of razor blades as Henry carefully altered documents, the soft whisper of glue being applied to piece together forged correspondence. The warm glow of oil lamps illuminated his painstaking work as he created evidence that would condemn an innocent man to Devil's Island. Henry's forgeries were masterful, documents that seemed to prove Dreyfus's guilt while protecting the real traitor. The soft rustle of manila folders being filed away carried fabricated secrets that fooled France's highest courts. When investigator Lieutenant Colonel Georges Picard discovered the truth, Henry forged even more documents to discredit him. The gentle tap of typewriter keys created layer upon layer of false evidence, each forgery demanding another to maintain the illusion. The House of Cards finally collapsed in 1898 when Henry's forgeries were exposed. Rather than face disgrace, he took his own life in his cell, leaving behind a confession that vindicated Dreyfus and shattered French military credibility. This scandal taught the world that institutional corruption thrives in secrecy and dies in the light of investigation. Breathe deeply and remember that truth, however buried under layers of deception, eventually finds its way to the surface. You are strolling through the sun-drenched piazzas of Renaissance Florence in 1478, where the gentle chime of cathedral bells masks the planning of one of history's most dramatic assassinations. The Pazzi family, rival bankers to the powerful Medicis, conspired with Pope Sixtus IV to eliminate Lorenzo and Giuliano de' Medici during Easter Mass at the Florence Cathedral. Picture the soft whisper of plotting voices in palace chambers, mixing with the distant sound of chisels shaping marble as Michelangelo and other artists worked nearby, unaware of the violence being planned. Francesco Pazzi and his co-conspirators chose the moment of consecration during High Mass for their attack, believing the brothers would be most vulnerable while kneeling in prayer. The sweet scent of incense and the gentle murmur of Latin prayers would provide cover for their daggers. On April 26th, the plot partially succeeded. Giuliano was killed, but Lorenzo escaped with only minor wounds, climbing into the cathedral's sacristy for safety. The soft gasp of the congregation gave way to chaos as Lorenzo's supporters rallied to his defense. Florence's response was swift and brutal. The Pazzi family was destroyed, their name banned from public buildings, and their coat of arms erased from the city. The gentle scrape of chisels now removed Pazzi symbols from palazzo walls instead of creating art. This failed conspiracy actually strengthened Medici power and helped establish the political principles that would influence Italian city-states for centuries. The attack also demonstrated how religious settings could become political battlegrounds, a pattern that would repeat throughout European history. Close your eyes and reflect on how even the most sacred moments can become stages for history's most profane ambitions. You are walking through the gardens of an English manor house in 1586, where the soft rustle of coded letters hidden in beer barrels carries whispers of regicide and Catholic restoration. Anthony Babington, a wealthy young Catholic, believed he could save Mary Queen of Scots by assassinating Elizabeth I. Picture the gentle scratch of quills encoding secret messages, the sweet scent of sealing wax masking correspondence that would doom both the sender and recipient. Mary Stewart, imprisoned for 19 years, had grown desperate for freedom. The soft creak of floorboards in her prison chambers marked the footsteps of servants secretly carrying letters that seemed to offer hope, but actually led to her execution. What the conspirators didn't know was that Sir Francis Walsingham, Elizabeth's spymaster, was reading every message. The gentle tap of code-breakers' fingers working through ciphers revealed the entire plot, while allowing it to unfold long enough to gather irrefutable evidence. Walsingham's network was so sophisticated that they could forge Mary's handwriting, adding incriminating postscripts to her actual letters. The soft whisper of ink drying on parchment sealed her fate with words she never wrote. When the trap closed, Babington and his co-conspirators were executed with medieval brutality. Mary herself was beheaded at Fotheringhay Castle, ending any Catholic claim to the English throne. This conspiracy established the template for modern intelligence work: infiltration, surveillance, and controlled operations that gather evidence while preventing actual harm. It also secured Protestant rule in England, shaping the nation's religious and political identity for centuries. Rest easy knowing that sometimes the most elaborate schemes reveal more about their creators than their targets ever could. You are standing in the torch-lit halls of medieval Pavia in 774 AD, where the soft rustle of diplomatic pouches contains documents that will reshape the political landscape of Western Europe for over a millennium. Charlemagne had just conquered the Lombard kingdom, and the gentle clink of armor being removed after victory mingles with the scratch of scribes recording a momentous decision. The Frankish king chose to honor his father Pepin's earlier promise to Pope Adrian III, formally donating vast Italian territories to the papal throne. Picture the sweet scent of melted wax as papal seals were applied to documents establishing the temporal power of the Church. The soft whisper of vellum pages rustling in candlelight carried words that would make future popes both spiritual leaders and earthly sovereigns. This donation solved a critical problem: how to protect the Pope from Byzantine or Lombard interference while maintaining the Church's independence. The gentle thud of territorial boundaries being redrawn on maps echoed through monastery scriptoriums as monks copied the historic agreement. For over 11 centuries, the Papal States controlled central Italy, collecting taxes, maintaining armies, and conducting diplomacy like any secular kingdom. The soft footsteps of papal legates carried church influence into every corner of European politics. The arrangement finally ended in 1870 during Italian unification, when the Papal States were absorbed into the new Kingdom of Italy, leaving only Vatican City under papal sovereignty. This medieval political arrangement shaped the relationship between church and state throughout European history, influencing everything from the Crusades to the Reformation. Close your eyes and consider how one king's promise to a pope quietly created a sovereignty that outlasted most empires and influenced a continent's development. You are entering the frost-covered forests of early 17th century Russia, where the soft crunch of snow underfoot masks one of history's most successful identity thefts, repeated 3 times. When Tsar Boris Godunov died in 1605, Russia descended into chaos known as the Time of Troubles. Into this void stepped a young man claiming to be Dmitry Ivanovich, the supposedly murdered youngest son of Ivan the Terrible. Picture the gentle crackle of campfires as this mysterious pretender convinced Polish nobles and Russian boyars that he was the rightful Tsar. The soft jingle of cavalry harnesses accompanied the first false Dmitry's march on Moscow, where he was actually crowned Tsar. But within a year, he was dead, killed in a palace coup. The gentle thud of his body hitting red square cobblestones should have ended the charade. Instead, a second false Dmitri appeared, then a third. Each claimed miraculous survival, supported by different factions seeking to control the Russian throne. The soft whisper of conspiracy and the clink of foreign coins funding these pretenders created a carnival of deception that lasted nearly a decade. What's remarkable is how successfully these imposters exploited Russian legitimacy crises. The gentle scratch of forged genealogies and manufactured evidence convinced thousands that dead princes could return from beyond the grave. The chaos finally ended when the Romanov dynasty took power in 1613, beginning 3 centuries of rule. But the false Dmitris established the template for political imposture that influenced Russian politics for generations. Breathe deeply and marvel at how identity itself became a weapon in the hands of clever criminals and desperate nations. You are walking along the dusty trade routes of 19th century India, where the soft jingle of caravan bells masks the presence of travelers who worship the goddess Kali through ritualized murder. The thugs, from which we get our English word, were members of organized gangs who befriended fellow travelers, then strangled them with silk scarves called rumels after gaining their trust. Picture the gentle clip-clop of oxen pulling laden carts along ancient trade routes, creating the perfect cover for crimes that claimed an estimated 2 million lives over 6 centuries. What made these murders particularly chilling was their religious justification. The soft whisper of prayers to Kali mixed with the practiced efficiency of killers who saw each death as a sacred offering. The sweet scent of incense at roadside shrines masked the planning of crimes that followed strict ritualistic patterns. Major William Henry Sleeman, a British administrator, spent decades infiltrating and documenting thuggee operations. The gentle scratch of his pen recording confessions and testimonies created the first systematic study of organized crime, establishing investigative techniques still used today. By the 1870s, Sleeman's campaign had effectively eliminated the thugs through a combination of infiltration, turned informants, and systematic arrests. The soft echo of prison doors closing marked the end of a criminal tradition older than most European nations. This campaign established modern policing methods for combating organized crime, including undercover operations, criminal profiling, and witness protection programs. The thuggee phenomenon also influenced how colonial authorities viewed indigenous customs, sometimes justifying harsh measures against traditional practices. Close your eyes and reflect on how the line between religious devotion and criminal behavior can blur in ways that challenge our understanding of both faith and justice. You are entering the perfumed salons of Louis XIV's Versailles in the 1670s, where the gentle tinkle of crystal glasses and the soft rustle of silk gowns mask France's most scandalous poisoning network. Madame de Brinvilliers, an aristocratic socialite, had perfected the art of murder through carefully administered doses of arsenic and other toxins. Picture her elegant dinner parties, where the sweet aroma of fine wine and delicate pastries concealed the bitter taste of death served to inconvenient husbands, relatives, and rivals. The gentle scratch of confession quills revealed a network that reached the highest levels of French society when Brinvilliers was finally caught. Her testimony implicated dozens of nobles, including some close to the Sun King himself, in a web of poisonings, black masses, and occult practices. Catherine de Chaise, known as La Voisin, operated from her modest home what was essentially a murder-for-hire business disguised as fortune-telling. The soft whisper of customers seeking love potions often left carrying more lethal preparations, while the gentle crackle of her furnace consumed evidence of countless crimes. When the scandal broke, it rocked Versailles to its foundations. The soft footsteps of investigators echoing through palace corridors revealed that even Madame de Montespan, the king's own mistress, had purchased questionable substances from the poison network. Louis XIV established a special court, the Chambre Ardente, to investigate. Over 400 people were arrested, 36 executed, and many more imprisoned or exiled. This affair transformed French justice, establishing new procedures for investigating organized crime and protecting royal security that influenced legal systems across Europe. Rest peacefully knowing that even history's most elegant societies harbor shadows that, when exposed, lead to stronger protections for the innocent. You are walking through the morning mist of an Irish countryside in 1916, where the gentle lapping of waves against a remote beach masks the arrival of a man whose private writings will become as infamous as his public treason. Sir Roger Casement, former British diplomat turned Irish nationalist, had just landed from a German submarine, hoping to lead an Easter rising against British rule. The soft crunch of sand under his boots marked the beginning of his final, fatal mission for Irish independence. But Casement carried more than revolutionary plans. British intelligence possessed his private diaries, filled with explicit accounts of homosexual encounters during his consular service in South America and Africa. The gentle scratch of his pen across diary pages had unknowingly created the evidence that would destroy his reputation and justify his execution. When Casement was captured and tried for treason, the British government faced a dilemma. Executing a respected humanitarian who had exposed colonial atrocities might create a martyr for Irish independence. The soft whisper of government ministers discussing strategy led to an elegant solution: leak the diaries. The gentle rustle of newspaper pages across Britain and Ireland carried scandalous excerpts that transformed public perception overnight. Casement, the humanitarian hero, became Casement the degenerate, his political cause tainted by personal disgrace. For decades, historians debated whether the diaries were genuine or forged by British intelligence. Modern forensic analysis suggests they were authentic, making this perhaps history's first use of sexual blackmail by revelation in political warfare. This case established the template for character assassination through private exposure, a tactic that continues to shape modern political discourse. Close your eyes and consider how our most private thoughts, committed to paper in moments of solitude, can become weapons in the hands of those who wish us harm. You are settling into the quiet reading room of a London newspaper office in October 1924, where the soft rustle of telegraph paper carries what appears to be evidence of Soviet interference in British politics. Picture the gentle tap of typewriter keys as editors examine a letter allegedly from Grigory Zinoviev, head of the Communist International, instructing British communists to prepare for armed revolution. The sweet scent of fresh ink and the soft whisper of newspaper pages being turned masked what would become one of the 20th century's most consequential forgeries. The letter surfaced just days before the 1924 general election, published by the conservative Daily Mail with dramatic headlines warning of Bolshevik plots. The gentle thud of newspapers hitting doorsteps across Britain carried words that would topple a government and reshape international relations. What's fascinating is how this forgery achieved its goals despite being fake. The soft murmur of voters discussing the letter in pubs and parlors turned public opinion against the Labour Party, which lost the election decisively. Ramsay MacDonald's government fell, and Britain's recognition of the Soviet Union was withdrawn. For decades, historians debated the letter's authenticity. The gentle scratch of researchers' pens across archived documents finally proved in the 1990s that it was forged, likely by white Russian émigrés with help from British intelligence officers. This deception established the template for modern disinformation campaigns, showing how fabricated documents released at strategic moments can influence democratic elections. Close your eyes and consider how sometimes the most powerful weapons in politics are made not of steel, but of carefully crafted words on paper. You are walking through the morning mist of medieval Italy in 728 AD, where the soft chime of monastery bells mingles with the gentle scratch of quills recording a transaction that will influence European politics for centuries. King Liutprand of the Lombards faced a crisis. His subjects were converting to Christianity, but the Pope remained vulnerable to Byzantine interference. Picture the warm glow of candlelit negotiations as the Lombard king made an unprecedented gesture, donating the fortress town of Sutri to the papal throne. The soft whisper of vellum pages rustling in monastery scriptoriums carried news of this modest gift, but its implications were enormous. For the first time, a pope possessed actual territorial sovereignty, complete with the right to collect taxes, maintain armies, and conduct independent diplomacy. What made this donation revolutionary was its timing. The gentle thud of Byzantine authority crumbling in Italy created a power vacuum that Liutprand filled by making the Pope his ally rather than his subject. The sweet scent of sealing wax on papal documents now carried the authority of temporal as well as spiritual power. This small fortress became the foundation stone of the Papal States, which would control central Italy for over a millennium. The soft footsteps of papal legates walking through European courts carried influence that stemmed directly from Liutprand's strategic generosity. The donation established the principle that the Church could legitimately hold earthly power, a concept that shaped medieval politics and influenced the relationship between church and state throughout European history. Breathe deeply and marvel at how one king's modest gift to secure local peace quietly created a sovereignty that would outlast most empires. You are entering the shadowy workshops of 18th century Paris, where the gentle scrape of metalworking tools masks the creation of jewelry forgeries that will help topple the French monarchy. Jeanne de Valois Saint-Remy, the mastermind behind the diamond necklace scandal, needed more than just one spectacular crime to fund her ambitions. Picture the soft clink of glass beads being carefully set into gilt settings, creating diamonds, convincing enough to fool even experienced jewelers in candlelight. The gentle whisper of her accomplices mixing chemical solutions created artificial gemstones that sparkled like the real treasures adorning Versailles courtiers. The sweet scent of heated wax and polishing compounds filled cramped workshops as teams of skilled forgers reproduced the jewelry that symbolized aristocratic power. What made these forgeries particularly damaging was how they spread. Jeanne sold fake versions of famous pieces, claiming they were gifts from Queen Marie Antoinette. The soft rustle of forged certificates of authenticity convinced buyers that they were purchasing royal treasures sold secretly to pay gambling debts. When the original diamond necklace scandal broke, investigators discovered Jeanne's broader network of jewelry fraud. The gentle tap of auctioneers' hammers had unknowingly sold dozens of fake royal pieces to collectors across Europe. These forgeries multiplied the scandal's impact, making every piece of royal jewelry seem suspicious and feeding public belief that the monarchy was corrupt and financially reckless. The affair demonstrated how fraud could weaponize public perception, turning symbols of power into evidence of decadence. Close your eyes and reflect on how sometimes the most dangerous counterfeits are those that confirm what people already want to believe. You are walking through the lamp-lit streets of London in 1678, where the soft echo of footsteps on cobblestones mingles with whispered fears of Catholic conspiracy and royal assassination. Titus Oates, a disgraced Anglican clergyman turned professional informant, claimed to have uncovered a vast Jesuit plot to kill King Charles II and place his Catholic brother James on the throne. Picture the gentle scratch of his pen across sworn affidavits, each word carefully crafted to exploit Protestant England's deepest fears. The soft rustle of pamphlets being distributed through coffee houses carried Oates's fabricated testimony to every corner of London. His stories grew more elaborate with each telling. Midnight meetings in Jesuit colleges, coded letters from Rome, and detailed plans for nationwide Catholic uprising. What made these lies so effective was their timing. The gentle crackle of fires burning Catholic chapels reflected genuine Protestant anxiety about religious change. Oates skillfully wove real names and places into his fictional conspiracy, making his accusations seem credible to frightened listeners. Parliament believed him completely. The soft thud of prison doors closing marked the arrest of dozens of innocent Catholics, while the gentle scrape of executioners' axes ended 35 lives based entirely on Oates's perjured testimony. The hysteria finally ended when Oates's stories became too outrageous to believe. He was eventually tried for perjury, pilloried, and imprisoned for life, though later pardoned. This fabricated crisis shaped English politics for generations, strengthening anti-Catholic sentiment and influencing the exclusion debates that nearly sparked civil war. Rest peacefully knowing that even the most elaborate lies eventually collapse under the weight of their own contradictions. You are standing in the sun-drenched market square of medieval Bologna in 1325, where the gentle splash of water from a wooden well bucket would soon become the excuse for one of history's most absurd conflicts. The citizens of Modena, during a daring nighttime raid, stole a simple oak bucket from Bologna's central well. Picture the soft clip-clop of horses' hooves on cobblestones as the raiders disappeared into darkness, carrying what they considered a trophy of municipal pride. What should have been a minor prank escalated into full-scale warfare between the two Italian city-states. The gentle scratch of diplomatic quills failed to negotiate the bucket's return as civic honor became more important than common sense. The conflict drew in the Holy Roman Empire and the Papal States, with Bologna supporting the Pope and Modena backing the Emperor. The soft rustle of battle standards being unfurled transformed a stolen bucket into a symbol of the great Guelph-Ghibelline rivalry that divided medieval Italy. At the Battle of Zappolino, over 4,000 soldiers died fighting for control of a piece of wood worth perhaps a few copper coins. The gentle thud of armored knights falling in muddy fields made this one of the most deadly disputes over the smallest object in military history. Modena won, keeping the bucket as a war trophy. It still hangs in the town's cathedral bell tower, a testament to human pride and municipal stubbornness. This ridiculous conflict influenced Italian politics for decades, strengthening factional divisions that would prevent Italian unification for centuries. Close your eyes and marvel at how the smallest provocations can become the greatest catastrophes when pride exceeds wisdom. You are entering the marble halls of the Lateran Palace in Rome in January 897, where the soft echo of footsteps mingles with the gentle scrape of a chair being dragged before a papal tribunal occupied by a corpse. Pope Stephen VI had ordered the exhumation of his predecessor, Pope Formosus, who had been dead for 7 months. Picture the sweet scent of incense failing to mask the odor of decay as Formosus's decomposing body was dressed in papal vestments and propped up in the defendant's chair. The gentle rustle of parchment being unrolled carried charges against the dead pope: perjury, violation of church law, and coveting the papacy. A deacon stood behind the corpse, speaking for the accused in what became history's most macabre legal proceeding. Stephen VI's voice echoed through the chamber as he screamed accusations at the silent defendant. The soft scratch of scribes recording testimony created an official record of this conversation between the living and the dead that shocked even medieval sensibilities. The corpse was found guilty. Formosus's papacy was declared invalid, his ordinations were annulled, and his body was stripped of papal vestments. The gentle thud of the remains being thrown into the Tiber River completed this unprecedented act of posthumous revenge. Public reaction was swift and horrified. Within months, Stephen VI was deposed, imprisoned, and strangled. The gentle splash of Formosus's bones washing ashore was seen as divine judgment against his persecutor. This bizarre trial damaged papal authority for decades and became a symbol of how institutional power could corrupt even religious leadership. Rest peacefully knowing that history's strangest moments often reveal the deepest truths about human nature and the abuse of power. You are walking through the dusty streets of 16th century Portugal, where the soft murmur of crowds gathered around a mysterious young man claims to be their dead king, returned from a distant battlefield. King Sebastian had disappeared at the Battle of Alcácer Quibir in Morocco in 1578, leaving Portugal without an heir and vulnerable to Spanish conquest. Picture the gentle rustling of hope stirring in Portuguese hearts as rumors spread that their beloved king had survived and would return to restore their independence. Into this desperate longing stepped Gabriel de Espinosa, a humble pastry cook who bore a striking resemblance to the lost monarch. The soft whisper of conspirators coached him in royal mannerisms, while the gentle scratch of forged documents created a false identity that convinced thousands. Espinosa's supporters included Ana de Austria, an illegitimate daughter of Don Juan of Austria, who provided funding and noble connections. The sweet scent of baked bread mixing with the metallic tang of forged coins created an unlikely rebellion centered around a kitchen. For months, this false Sebastian gathered followers across Portugal and Spain. The gentle tread of pilgrims' feet wore paths to secret meetings where the king promised liberation from Spanish rule and restoration of Portuguese glory. The deception ended when Spanish authorities arrested Espinosa and his accomplices. Despite torture, he maintained his royal identity until his execution, dying with the dignity his supporters believed proved his authenticity. This imposture demonstrated how desperate people will embrace even obvious deceptions if they offer hope for liberation from unbearable circumstances. Close your eyes and consider how sometimes the most powerful truths are found in the most elaborate lies. You are entering the hushed libraries of medieval Spain, where the soft scratch of quill pens across parchment masks one of history's most successful academic frauds. In the 13th century, a mysterious scholar known only as the Doctor of Salamanca began producing Latin translations of ancient Greek medical and philosophical texts that had been lost for centuries. Picture the gentle whisper of manuscript pages being turned by eager students, unaware they were reading brilliant forgeries rather than recovered classics. The soft scrape of styluses on wax tablets carried excitement through monastery scriptoriums as monks copied these rediscovered works. The sweet scent of vellum and iron gall ink filled medieval libraries as Europe's greatest scholars praised texts that existed nowhere in the ancient world. What made these forgeries so successful was their quality. The anonymous doctor possessed extraordinary knowledge of both Greek philosophy and medieval Latin, creating seamless translations that improved upon genuine classical sources. His Aristotelian medical treatises advanced European understanding of anatomy and disease for centuries. The gentle thud of university lectures being delivered across Europe spread the doctor's fabricated wisdom from Salamanca to Paris to Oxford. Students memorized passages from texts that were more medieval than ancient, their education shaped by one brilliant forger's imagination. The fraud wasn't exposed until Renaissance humanists developed more sophisticated textual analysis techniques. The soft scratch of scholarly criticism finally revealed anachronisms that proved the work's medieval origins. These forgeries actually advanced human knowledge, demonstrating how even deceptive scholarship could serve education and progress when guided by genuine learning rather than mere profit. Breathe deeply and reflect on how sometimes the most beneficial crimes are those committed by criminals who love their subjects more than themselves. You are standing on the windswept Essex coast in 1587, where the soft crash of waves against wooden ships mingles with the gentle flutter of banners preparing for Spanish invasion and the whispered emergence of England's most peculiar royal pretender. As Queen Elizabeth I prepared to address her troops at Tilbury, a mysterious figure appeared claiming to be the true monarch. This impostor, whose real name remains unknown, insisted that Elizabeth was illegitimate and that he possessed divine right to England's throne through descent from earlier kings. Picture the gentle rustle of military tents as soldiers debated this strange claim while Spanish ships gathered across the Channel. The soft clink of armor being donned mixed with nervous laughter as troops wondered whether they were defending the rightful queen or a usurper. What made this imposture remarkable was its timing. With England facing existential threat from Philip II's armada, the last thing the nation needed was dynastic confusion. The gentle scratch of hastily written dispatches carried news of the pretender to Elizabeth's council, while beacons prepared to signal invasion. The impostor's supporters were few but vocal, mostly religious dissidents who opposed Elizabeth's Protestant settlement. The soft whisper of prayers in hidden Catholic chapels carried hopes that Spanish victory might restore the true king alongside the old faith. Elizabeth's government handled the situation with characteristic pragmatism, quietly arresting the pretender and his followers without creating martyrs or additional publicity for their cause. This bizarre episode demonstrated how even the most stable monarchies remain vulnerable to identity fraud during moments of national crisis. Close your eyes and marvel at how history's greatest challenges often produce its most unlikely opportunists. You are entering the candlelit scriptoriums of 9th century France, where the gentle scratch of quill pens across parchment creates the most influential collection of fake documents in European history. Around 850 AD, an unknown clerk working under the pseudonym Isidore Mercator began forging papal letters dating back to the earliest Christian centuries. Picture the soft whisper of pages turning as he carefully studied genuine papal correspondence, learning to replicate ancient writing styles and ecclesiastical language. These false decretals claimed that early popes possessed supreme authority over all bishops and temporal rulers, supporting papal supremacy with fabricated evidence from Christianity's first centuries. The sweet scent of oak gall ink and vellum filled monastery workshops as scribes unknowingly copied forgeries that would reshape medieval civilization. The gentle thud of manuscript chests being carried across Europe spread these fake decrees to every major cathedral and monastery. Medieval scholars, lacking modern analytical tools, accepted them as genuine proof of ancient papal power. For centuries, these forgeries justified papal claims to supremacy over kings and emperors. The soft footsteps of papal legates walking through royal courts carried authority supposedly granted by documents that existed only in one clever forger's imagination. The deception wasn't exposed until Renaissance humanists developed sophisticated textual criticism. The gentle scratch of scholarly pens finally revealed anachronisms and linguistic inconsistencies that proved the decretal's medieval origins. These forgeries shaped the entire medieval church-state relationship, influencing everything from the investiture controversy to the Crusades, and helping establish the papal monarchy that governed medieval Europe. Rest peacefully knowing that even history's most successful deceptions eventually yield to the patient pursuit of truth. Hey friends, if you love this series of gentle historical mysteries, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell. These quiet stories of deception and transformation continue to show us how individual choices in forgotten moments shaped the world we know today. Sweet dreams, and we'll continue our peaceful journey through history's shadows in the next part. You are settling into a quiet library in early 20th century Russia, where the soft rustle of manuscript pages masks the creation of history's most destructive fabrication. Picture the gentle scratch of a copyist's pen in the shadowy offices of the Okhrana, Russia's secret police, as they adapted an obscure French novel about Napoleon III into a supposed exposé of Jewish world domination. The sweet scent of ink and the soft whisper of pages being bound created what would become the blueprint for modern conspiracy theories. Pyotr Rachkovsky, head of the Okhrana's foreign operations, needed to redirect Russian revolutionary sentiment away from the Tsar and toward minority scapegoats. The gentle thud of printing presses in basement workshops produced copies of this fabricated protocol that claimed to record secret meetings of Jewish leaders plotting global control. What's chilling is how this obvious forgery spread worldwide despite its contradictions and plagiarized passages. The soft footsteps of distributors carried these lies across continents, translated into dozens of languages, and adapted to local prejudices. The protocols influenced everything from the Russian Revolution's aftermath to Nazi ideology, Japanese militarism, and modern Middle Eastern politics. Even after being definitively exposed as fiction, the document continues to circulate wherever anti-Semitic sentiment finds fertile ground. This fabrication demonstrated how manufactured evidence could weaponize ancient prejudices and transform local hatred into global ideology that transcends borders and generations. Close your eyes and reflect on how the most dangerous lies are often those that tell people what they desperately want to believe about their enemies. You are walking through the golden wheat fields of Western Australia in 1932, where the soft whisper of grain swaying in warm breezes mingles with an approaching army, not of soldiers, but of enormous flightless birds. After World War I, the Australian government had encouraged veterans to establish wheat farms in remote areas. But the Great Depression made farming barely profitable, and now 20,000 emus were systematically destroying crops across the region. Picture the gentle thud of massive bird feet trampling through wheat fields like a feathered invasion force. Major Gwynedd Purves, Win Aubrey Meredith, led a military expedition armed with machine guns to combat this agricultural crisis. The soft click of ammunition being loaded mixed with the distant calls of emus as soldiers prepared for what newspapers mockingly called the Great Emu War. What followed was a comedy of military incompetence. The emus proved remarkably intelligent, scattering when attacked and regrouping elsewhere. The gentle whir of machine gun fire rarely found its targets as the birds employed guerrilla tactics that would have impressed human strategists. After weeks of futile combat, the military withdrew, having eliminated fewer than 1,000 birds while expending thousands of rounds. The soft rustle of newspaper headlines across Australia celebrated the emus' victory over modern weaponry. This absurd conflict highlighted the challenges of soldier settlement schemes and influenced Australia's approach to agricultural policy and wildlife management for decades. The war became a beloved piece of Australian folklore, demonstrating how even military failures can become sources of national character and humor. Breathe deeply and marvel at how sometimes nature's simplest creatures can humble humanity's most sophisticated technology. You are standing in a quiet farmyard in Cardiff, New York, in 1869, where the soft scrape of shovels breaking soil reveals what appears to be the fossilized remains of an ancient biblical giant. George Hull, a cigar maker and atheist, had grown tired of fundamentalist preachers insisting that giants once walked the earth as described in Genesis. Picture the gentle chip of sculptor's tools as he commissioned a 10-foot-tall gypsum statue, aged with acid and buried on his cousin's property for a year. The discovery created nationwide sensation. The soft murmur of crowds gathering around the excavation site grew into a roar as newspapers proclaimed the find proof of biblical truth. The sweet scent of autumn leaves mixed with the earthy aroma of freshly turned soil as thousands paid admission to see the petrified man. What made Hull's hoax so successful was its timing. Post-Civil War America hungered for scientific validation of religious beliefs, and the Cardiff giant seemed to bridge faith and reason. The gentle clink of admission coins filled Hull's pockets as he sold shares in his discovery to eager investors. P.T. Barnum offered $60,000 for the giant, and when refused, created his own replica, claiming Hull's statue was fake and his was genuine. The soft laughter of audiences watching two hoaxers compete over authenticity added another layer of absurdity. Hull eventually confessed, but the Cardiff giant had already influenced American attitudes toward archaeology, paleontology, and the relationship between science and religion. This hoax established the template for manufactured evidence designed to support predetermined beliefs rather than discover truth. Close your eyes and consider how the most successful deceptions often give people exactly what they want to find. You are entering the sun-warmed piazzas of medieval Cremona in 1446, where the gentle splash of water from a public fountain becomes the center of Italy's Second Great Bucket War. This time, the theft involved a bronze bucket from Cremona's central market, stolen during a nighttime raid by soldiers from neighboring Crema. Picture the soft clip-clop of horses' hooves on cobblestones as the raiders disappeared into darkness, carrying what they considered a symbol of civic humiliation rather than mere plumbing equipment. The Cremonese response was swift and disproportionate. The gentle scratch of diplomatic quills failed to secure the bucket's return as municipal honor again proved more valuable than common sense. The soft rustle of battle standards being unfurled transformed a kitchen utensil into a casus belli that would draw in half of northern Italy. What makes this second bucket war fascinating is how it mirrored the earlier Bologna-Modena conflict, suggesting that Italian city-states had learned nothing from their previous absurdity. The gentle thud of siege engines being assembled demonstrated that human pride could repeatedly triumph over human wisdom. The conflict escalated when Cremona's allies from Piacenza captured Crema's ceremonial standard in retaliation. The soft whisper of negotiations finally ended the war when both cities agreed to return their stolen symbols, though Crema quietly kept the bucket. This second bucket war influenced the development of Renaissance diplomacy, as Italian statesmen realized that small provocations could spiral into major conflicts unless handled with greater sophistication. The incident also inspired political theorists like Machiavelli to analyze how trivial disputes could determine the fate of nations. Rest peacefully knowing that history's most ridiculous conflicts often teach us the most serious lessons about human nature and political wisdom. You are entering a dusty antiquities shop in Jerusalem in 1883, where the soft whisper of ancient leather bindings masks one of biblical archaeology's most elaborate deceptions. Moses Wilhelm Shapira, a converted Jew dealing in Middle Eastern antiquities, claimed to have discovered 15 leather strips containing an alternative version of Deuteronomy, written in ancient Hebrew script. Picture the gentle scrape of scholarly magnifying glasses examining what appeared to be the oldest biblical manuscript ever found. The soft rustle of academic robes filled the British Museum as Europe's greatest biblical scholars debated the strip's authenticity. The sweet scent of old leather and the earthy aroma of ancient ink created an atmosphere of scholarly excitement as experts proclaimed this potentially the greatest archaeological discovery of the century. Shapira's asking price was £1 million, an astronomical sum that reflected the manuscript's supposed significance. The gentle scratch of examination reports filled academic journals as scholars analyzed script, language, and content that seemed to predate all known biblical sources by centuries. French scholar Charles Clermont-Ganneau exposed the forgery by identifying modern chemical treatments and anachronistic linguistic features. The soft thud of scholarly reputations collapsing echoed through academic circles as the manuscripts were declared clever fakes. Shapira fled to Amsterdam, where he took his own life in a hotel room, leaving behind a note protesting his innocence. The gentle splash of his body hitting a canal marked the end of one of archaeology's most ambitious frauds. This hoax influenced the development of scientific authentication methods that protect biblical scholarship and archaeological research today. Close your eyes and reflect on how the desire to find proof of ancient truths can blind even the wisest scholars to present deceptions. You are kneeling beside a babbling brook in the Yorkshire countryside in 1917, where the soft trickle of water over stones mingles with the gentle laughter of two young girls who are about to fool the world. Elsie Wright, 16, and her 9-year-old cousin Frances Griffiths borrowed Elsie's father's camera to photograph what they claimed were real fairies dancing by Cottingley Beck. Picture the soft click of the camera shutter capturing images that would convince some of the world's greatest minds that magical creatures lived among us. The gentle rustle of photographic plates being developed in makeshift darkrooms revealed 5 photographs showing the girls interacting with tiny winged beings. The sweet scent of photographic chemicals mixed with the earthy aroma of Yorkshire moorland as these images prepared to transform from childhood game into international sensation. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, creator of the rational detective Sherlock Holmes, championed the photographs as proof of fairy existence. The soft scratch of his pen across magazine articles spread the Cottingley story worldwide, lending the credibility of literature's greatest detective to what were actually paper cutouts from children's books. For 60 years, the photographs puzzled experts and believers alike. The gentle whisper of aging voices finally revealed the truth in 1981 when Elsie and Frances, now elderly, confessed their childhood prank had grown far beyond their innocent intentions. What's remarkable is how sophisticated adults wanted to believe in magic so desperately that they ignored obvious evidence of trickery. The soft footsteps of pilgrims visiting Cottingley demonstrated humanity's eternal longing for wonder in an increasingly scientific world. This hoax influenced the development of photographic analysis and taught us important lessons about confirmation bias and the desire to believe. Breathe deeply and consider how sometimes the most innocent deceptions reveal the deepest truths about human nature and our need for mystery. You are walking through the torch-lit halls of medieval Rome in 774 AD, where the soft scratch of scribes' quills creates documents that will justify papal territorial claims for over 1,000 years. When Charlemagne conquered the Lombard kingdom, Pope Adrian I presented him with a document supposedly proving that previous Frankish rulers had promised vast Italian territories to the Church. Picture the gentle whisper of vellum pages rustling as the Pope displayed evidence of earlier donations that conveniently supported his current territorial ambitions. The soft glow of candlelight illuminated seals and signatures that appeared to authenticate promises made by Charlemagne's father Pepin and grandfather Charles Martel. The sweet scent of melted wax on papal documents masked the creation of retrospective history designed to legitimize present claims. What made this deception effective was its plausibility. Charlemagne's predecessors had indeed made promises to various popes, making it difficult to distinguish authentic commitments from fabricated extensions. The gentle thud of territorial boundaries being redrawn on maps reflected the document's political success. This donation became the legal foundation for expanded papal states, justifying church control over central Italy for over 11 centuries. The soft footsteps of papal administrators collecting taxes and commanding armies stemmed directly from this medieval forgery's apparent authenticity. Renaissance scholars eventually exposed the document's problems, but by then, centuries of possession had created legitimate claims through prescription and custom. This forgery influenced European politics throughout the medieval period, affecting everything from the investiture controversy to the Italian wars and the relationship between temporal and spiritual authority. Close your eyes and marvel at how documents created to justify temporary political arrangements can become permanent foundations for lasting institutions. You are sitting in a quiet Tokyo study in 1927, where the soft rustle of classified papers masks the creation of a document that may or may not reveal Japan's secret plans for Asian domination. The Tanaka Memorial purported to be a secret report from Prime Minister Jichi Tanaka to Emperor Hirohito, outlining Japan's strategy for conquering China, Southeast Asia, and eventually the world. Picture the gentle scratch of diplomatic pens as this document surfaced in Chinese intelligence circles, offering apparent proof of Japanese imperial ambitions. The soft whisper of translation work filled newspaper offices across China as editors prepared to publish what seemed like smoking gun evidence of Japanese aggression. The sweet scent of fresh ink carried words that would inflame anti-Japanese sentiment and justify Chinese resistance to Japanese expansion. What makes this document historically fascinating is that its authenticity remains disputed. The gentle thud of scholarly debates continues today, with some historians arguing it's a Chinese forgery designed to discredit Japan, while others suggest it reflects genuine Japanese strategic thinking, even if not literally authentic. Regardless of its origins, the memorial became a powerful propaganda tool. The soft footsteps of Chinese diplomats carried copies to Western governments, using the document to build international support for resistance to Japanese expansion in the 1930s. The memorial influenced international perceptions of Japanese militarism and helped justify Allied opposition during World War II. Whether genuine intelligence or sophisticated propaganda, it shaped global politics during one of the 20th century's most crucial periods. This case demonstrates how documents of questionable authenticity can become historically significant through their political impact rather than their factual accuracy. Rest peacefully knowing that sometimes the line between truth and forgery matters less than the effects both can have on human events. You are entering a newspaper office in Ithaca, New York, in 1844, where the soft clatter of printing presses mingles with the creation of American politics' first great dirty trick. With just weeks before the presidential election, an anonymous author published excerpts from what he claimed was Rohrback's tour through the western and southern states. This fictional travel journal described Democratic candidate James K. Polk brutally branding his slaves, complete with vivid details designed to horrify Northern abolitionists. Picture the gentle thud of newspapers hitting doorsteps across the Northeast as this fabricated story spread through Whig Party publications. The soft whisper of readers sharing shocking passages in coffee houses and parlors carried the lie faster than any correction could follow. The Rohrback forgery was sophisticated propaganda, mixing real places and plausible details with fabricated atrocities. The sweet scent of printer's ink carried words carefully crafted to exploit Northern anti-slavery sentiment, while appearing to be neutral travel writing rather than partisan attack. Polk's supporters quickly exposed the hoax by proving that no book or author named Rohrback existed. The gentle scratch of investigative pens revealed the forgery's origins in Whig Party headquarters, but the damage was done. Though Polk still won the election, the incident established Rohrback as a permanent term in American political vocabulary, meaning a dirty trick or false story released just before an election. This forgery created the template for modern political disinformation, false documents released too late for proper verification, but early enough to influence voter behavior. The incident influenced the development of political journalism and established the principle that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, especially during election seasons. Breathe deeply and consider how the most effective political lies often contain just enough truth to seem believable to those who want to believe them. You are entering a quiet West German farmhouse in 1983, where the soft rustle of aged paper mingles with the gentle scratch of fountain pens, creating what would become the most expensive literary hoax in history. Konrad Kujau, a small-time forger specializing in Nazi memorabilia, had been producing fake Hitler artifacts for years when journalist Gerd Heidemann approached him seeking sensational material. Picture the warm glow of desk lamps illuminating Kujau's painstaking work as he filled notebook after notebook with fabricated entries supposedly written by the Führer himself. The gentle whisper of pages being artificially aged with tea stains and chemical treatments created 62 volumes of diaries spanning 1932 to 1945. The sweet scent of aging paper mixed with the metallic tang of specially prepared ink as Kujau crafted what he hoped would be his masterpiece of historical deception. Stern magazine paid 10 million Deutschmarks for exclusive rights, believing they had secured the scoop of the century. The soft thud of printing presses prepared to share Hitler's private thoughts with the world, promising to revolutionize our understanding of Nazi history. But forensic analysis quickly revealed the hoax. The gentle scratch of scientific instruments exposed modern paper, incorrect chemical compositions, and historical anachronisms that proved the diary's recent creation. The scandal destroyed careers, bankrupted Stern magazine's credibility, and sent both Kujau and Heidemann to prison for fraud. This hoax influenced the development of document authentication procedures and reminded historians that sensational discoveries require extraordinary verification before publication. Close your eyes and reflect on how our fascination with evil can make us vulnerable to those who would exploit that darkness for profit. You are entering the hushed halls of Yale University's rare book library in 1965, where the soft whisper of gloved hands turning ancient pages reveals what appears to be history's most precious cartographic treasure. Picture the gentle rustle of medieval parchment as scholars examine a map seemingly drawn around 1440, showing not only Europe and Asia, but also a mysterious landmass labeled Vinlanda Insula, apparently proving that Vikings reached America 50 years before Columbus. The sweet scent of old vellum and the earthy aroma of iron gall ink filled the air as experts proclaimed this the most important medieval map ever discovered. The soft scratch of academic pens filled journals worldwide as historians rewrote the story of American discovery. Yale University paid $1 million for this treasure, displaying it proudly while the gentle footsteps of pilgrims wore paths through the library as visitors came to see proof that Leif Erikson truly reached the New World. But scientific analysis revealed a devastating truth. The gentle hiss of spectrometers and chemical tests exposed anatase, a form of titanium dioxide not used in ink until the 1920s. The map was a brilliant modern forgery, probably created by Father Joseph Fischer, a German Jesuit scholar. This hoax influenced how we authenticate historical documents and reminded us that even the most sophisticated institutions can fall victim to forgeries that tell them what they want to believe. The Vinland map established new standards for scientific analysis of ancient documents, protecting future scholarship from similar deceptions. Close your eyes and reflect on how our desire to rewrite history sometimes blinds us to present-day deceptions hiding in plain sight. You are walking through the olive groves of central Italy in 781 AD, where the soft chirping of cicadas mingles with the gentle scratch of quills, creating another addition to the papal forgery collection. Building on previous successful donations, unknown clerks in the papal chancery crafted documents claiming that Charlemagne had granted the church extensive territories around the town of Mentana, northeast of Rome. Picture the warm glow of oil lamps illuminating monastery scriptoriums as scribes carefully copied these fabricated grants onto authentic-looking parchment. The gentle whisper of sealing wax being applied to false documents carried the weight of imperial authority, even though Charlemagne had never made such specific promises. The sweet scent of frankincense and the earthy aroma of vellum masked the creation of retroactive history designed to legitimize papal territorial expansion. What made this forgery particularly clever was its modest scale. Unlike grandiose fabrications claiming entire kingdoms, the Mentana donation involved realistic territories that Charlemagne might plausibly have granted. The soft thud of boundary stones being placed reflected the document's practical success in establishing papal control over strategic farmlands. For centuries, this forged donation justified church ownership of productive agricultural estates that funded papal operations. The gentle clip-clop of tax collectors' horses carried revenues directly traceable to this medieval fiction's apparent authenticity. Renaissance humanists eventually exposed the anachronistic language and suspicious provenance, but by then, centuries of possession had created legitimate property claims through adverse possession and prescription. This forgery influenced medieval land law and demonstrated how small, believable lies often prove more durable than spectacular fabrications. Breathe deeply and consider how history's most successful deceptions are often those that ask for reasonable things through unreasonable means. You are kneeling beside a gnarled tree in rural Minnesota in 1898, where the soft scrape of farming tools against stone reveals what appears to be medieval Scandinavian writing carved into American soil. Olaf Oman, a Swedish-American farmer, claimed his axe struck this mysterious stone while clearing trees from his property near Kensington. Picture the gentle rustle of autumn leaves as he cleaned centuries of dirt from runic inscriptions that seemed to record a Viking expedition reaching the American heartland in 1362. The soft whisper of academic debates filled scholarly journals as linguists and historians examined this potential proof that Norse explorers penetrated deep into North America. The sweet scent of prairie grass and the earthy aroma of freshly turned soil provided the backdrop for what could revolutionize our understanding of pre-Columbian exploration. The inscription told a dramatic story. 14 Norsemen and 22 Goths exploring westward from Vinland, with 10 of their companions killed by hostile natives. The gentle scratch of translation work revealed apparent medieval Scandinavian dialects that seemed authentic to casual observers. However, professional rhinologists identified numerous problems: linguistic anachronisms, carving techniques unknown in medieval Scandinavia, and runic characters that didn't exist until the 19th century. The soft thud of scholarly rejection landed heavily on believers who had embraced this evidence of Scandinavian American heritage. Despite debunking, the Kensington runestone became a beloved piece of Minnesota folklore, displayed in museums and celebrated by Norwegian American communities seeking connection to their Viking ancestors. This hoax influenced the development of archaeological authentication methods and reminded us that cultural pride can sometimes override scientific evidence. Rest peacefully knowing that the desire to find heroic ancestors in our landscape often reveals more about present hopes than past realities. You are entering the humid jungles of British Honduras in 1927, where the soft patter of tropical rain on broad leaves masks the discovery of one of archaeology's most mysterious artifacts. Anna Mitchell Hedges, 17-year-old daughter of British adventurer Frederick Mitchell Hedges, claimed to have found a perfect crystal skull beneath a collapsed altar in the ruined Maya city of Luba-Antun. Picture the gentle beam of her flashlight illuminating what appeared to be an ancient artifact of impossible precision, carved from a single piece of quartz with anatomically perfect details. The soft whisper of jungle winds carried news of this discovery back to civilization, where the gentle scratch of newspaper pens spread tales of Maya crystal skulls possessing supernatural powers. The sweet scent of tropical flowers mixed with the musty aroma of ancient ruins as Mitchell Hedges proclaimed this proof of advanced pre-Columbian technology. What made the skull fascinating was its technical perfection. No tool marks were visible, and the crystal structure seemed to have been carved in defiance of the mineral's natural fracture patterns. The gentle click of cameras captured images that would fuel decades of speculation about lost civilizations and alien visitors. Modern analysis revealed the truth. The skull was carved using 20th-century diamond-tipped tools, probably in Germany, and artificially aged using chemical treatments. The gentle hum of electron microscopes exposed manufacturing techniques unknown to ancient Maya craftsmen. This hoax influenced popular culture, inspiring countless books and movies about crystal skulls, while teaching archaeologists important lessons about scientific skepticism and proper excavation documentation. The Mitchell Hedges skull established the template for New Age archaeology, where wishful thinking often trumps scientific evidence. Close your eyes and marvel at how objects of mysterious beauty can capture our imagination, even when their mysteries prove entirely modern. You are entering a quiet Mormon archives building in Salt Lake City in 1985, where the soft whisper of protective gloves handling ancient paper masks one of religious history's most dangerous deceptions. Mark Hoffman, a master forger and devout Mormon, had spent years creating fake historical documents that challenged fundamental church teachings. Picture the gentle scratch of his pen across artificially aged paper as he crafted a letter supposedly written by Mormon founder Joseph Smith, describing his discovery of golden plates with the help of a magical salamander rather than an angel. The soft rustle of document pages being examined by church historians carried potentially devastating implications. This salamander letter suggested Smith's early religious experiences were rooted in folk magic rather than divine revelation, a discovery that could shake Mormon faith to its foundations. The church purchased Hoffman's forgeries for hundreds of thousands of dollars, keeping the most damaging documents secret while scholars debated their implications. The sweet scent of old paper mixed with the tension of religious crisis as leaders grappled with evidence that seemed to rewrite their sacred history. But Hoffman's web of deception was collapsing. Facing exposure, he constructed pipe bombs, killing 2 people and injuring himself while attempting to fake his own death. The gentle thud of explosions shattered more than windows. They revealed how far someone would go to protect elaborate lies. The investigation exposed Hoffman's entire forgery operation, revealing dozens of fake historical documents that had influenced Mormon historical scholarship for years. This case transformed religious document authentication and reminded us that faith communities can become vulnerable to those who exploit their deepest beliefs for personal gain. Breathe deeply and reflect on how the most dangerous deceptions are often those that target what people hold most sacred. You are entering the cluttered workshop of a Parisian forger in the 1860s, where the soft scratch of quill pens across parchment creates an entire alternate history of human correspondence. Dennis Vrain Lucas possessed an extraordinary talent. He could forge the handwriting of any historical figure, from ancient Romans to medieval saints to Renaissance masters. Picture the gentle whisper of aging techniques being applied to fresh parchment as he created thousands of fake letters spanning 2 millennia of human history. His most audacious creation was correspondence between Pontius Pilate and Julius Caesar, written entirely in French, apparently proving that French was the universal language of the ancient world. The soft glow of oil lamps illuminated his workshop as he crafted letters from Cleopatra, Alexander the Great, and even Jesus Christ, all conveniently composed in modern French prose. Michel Chazels, a distinguished mathematician and member of the French Academy, became Vrain Lucas's primary victim, purchasing over 27,000 forged documents for enormous sums. The gentle thud of money changing hands fueled the forger's increasingly outrageous productions, including love letters between Newton and Pascal that proved Pascal had invented calculus first. The fraud unraveled when Chazels publicly presented some documents, causing international scholarly embarrassment. The soft scratch of expert analysis revealed linguistic anachronisms and historical impossibilities that exposed the entire collection as fraudulent. Vrain Lucas was imprisoned, but his forgeries had already influenced historical scholarship and damaged France's academic reputation internationally. This case established modern principles of document authentication and reminded scholars that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, regardless of the claimant's credentials. Rest peacefully knowing that even the most elaborate deceptions eventually collapse under the weight of their own impossible ambitions. You are walking through the mist-covered highlands of 18th century Scotland, where the soft echo of ancient Gaelic melodies mingles with the gentle scratch of pens creating epic poetry that never existed. James Macpherson claimed to have collected and translated fragments of ancient Gaelic verse composed by Ossian, a legendary 3rd century bard. Picture the romantic glow of firelight illuminating what appeared to be Europe's oldest epic poetry, predating Homer and rivaling the greatest classical literature in beauty and antiquity. The soft whisper of these translated verses captivated European intellectuals hungry for alternatives to classical Mediterranean culture. The gentle rustle of manuscript pages carried tales of Celtic heroes, tragic love, and Highland warriors that seemed to authenticate Scotland's ancient literary heritage. What made Macpherson's deception so successful was its timing. Enlightenment. Europe craved noble, savage literature that combined primitive authenticity with sophisticated emotion. The sweet scent of Highland heather and the earthy aroma of ancient manuscripts, all carefully fabricated, created the perfect romantic package. Napoleon carried Ossian's poems on his campaigns. Goethe translated passages into German, and composers like Brahms set verses to music. The gentle scratch of translation pens spread these fake Celtic epics across Europe, influencing romantic literature for generations. Samuel Johnson famously challenged Macpherson to produce original Gaelic manuscripts, which never materialized. Modern scholarship has confirmed that while Macpherson used some genuine Gaelic sources, the cohesive epic poems were largely his own Romantic-era compositions. This literary forgery influenced European nationalism, Scottish cultural identity, and Romantic poetry, while establishing the template for cultural appropriation, disguised as scholarly recovery. Close your eyes and consider how sometimes fake ancient wisdom can inspire genuine modern creativity, even when built on elaborate deceptions. You are entering the papal archives in medieval Rome, where the soft rustle of countless forged documents creates a symphony of fabricated history designed to justify church supremacy over temporal rulers. Building on the famous donation of Constantine, papal clerks created numerous supporting documents that seemed to corroborate the original forgery. Picture the gentle scratch of scribes working by candlelight, crafting imperial edicts, witness testimonies, and confirmatory letters that created an entire fictional legal framework for papal temporal authority. The soft whisper of sealing wax being applied to backdated documents carried the apparent weight of imperial Roman law. These supporting forgeries included letters from Constantine's mother Helena, testimony from Roman senators, and confirmations from later emperors, all carefully crafted to make the original donation seem historically inevitable. What made these supplementary forgeries particularly effective was their attention to bureaucratic detail. The sweet scent of authentic parchment mixed with artificially aged ink as forgers reproduced the complex administrative language that characterized genuine imperial documents. For centuries, these supporting documents provided evidence that medieval popes cited when asserting supremacy over kings and emperors. The gentle thud of papal bulls and royal submissions reflected the practical success of this elaborate documentary fraud. Renaissance humanists eventually exposed the entire collection's problematic provenance and anachronistic language, but by then, centuries of papal temporal power had created legitimate claims through prescription and custom. This systematic forgery campaign influenced the entire medieval relationship between spiritual and temporal authority, affecting everything from the investiture controversy to the rise of nation-states. The Papal Forgery Workshop established techniques of systematic documentary fraud that influenced how institutions create and maintain authority through manufactured evidence. Breathe deeply and reflect on how sometimes the most powerful institutions are built on foundations of carefully crafted fictions that become more real than reality itself. You are entering the dusty archives of 18th century antiquarian collectors, where the soft whisper of aged paper masks the creation of an entire fictional correspondence between England's most famous highwaymen and various historical figures. Enterprising forgers, capitalizing on Dick Turpin's legendary status, created hundreds of fake letters supposedly written by the highwaymen to friends, accomplices, and even government officials. Picture the gentle scratch of quills carefully imitating period handwriting as these fabricators built an elaborate fictional biography around a relatively minor criminal. The soft rustle of these forged letters being sold to collectors created a thriving market for Turpin memorabilia. The sweet scent of old paper and the earthy aroma of iron gall ink masked documents that transformed a common horse thief into a romantic gentleman bandit who robbed the rich to help the poor. What made these forgeries successful was their exploitation of popular mythology. The gentle clink of coins changing hands reflected collectors' willingness to pay premium prices for letters that confirmed their romantic notions about highwayman culture. These fake documents influenced how historians understood 18th century crime and social conditions. The soft thud of scholarly books incorporated forged evidence that painted an entirely fictional picture of highway robbery as organized, genteel, and politically motivated resistance to authority. Modern analysis has revealed that most Turpin correspondence in museum collections is fraudulent, created by Victorian-era forgers who understood that romantic legends sold better than mundane criminal reality. This systematic literary forgery influenced how we remember English criminal history and established the template for transforming historical figures into marketable myths through manufactured documentation. Close your eyes and consider how sometimes the legends we prefer become more influential than the truths we discover. You are kneeling in a quiet Buddhist temple in medieval Japan, where the soft chime of temple bells masks the creation of one of religious history's most peculiar forgeries. During the Heian period, ambitious monks seeking to elevate their temple's status began creating fake Chinese Buddhist sutras that claimed to contain secret teachings of extraordinary power. Picture the gentle scratch of brushes across silk as these forgers painted elaborate calligraphy that appeared to be ancient Chinese texts, but contained entirely fabricated Buddhist doctrine. The soft whisper of these scrolls being unrolled in candlelit ceremonies carried supposed wisdom from legendary Chinese masters who had never existed. The sweet scent of sandalwood incense mixed with fresh ink as monks created an entire fictional Buddhist lineage that claimed direct transmission from the Buddha himself. What made these forgeries particularly sophisticated was their integration of genuine Buddhist concepts with invented spiritual practices. The gentle rustle of silk scrolls being copied and distributed spread these fake teachings throughout Japanese Buddhism, influencing meditation practices and temple rituals for centuries. The most famous of these fraudulent texts became known as the Devil's Bible because it claimed to contain secret knowledge so powerful that improper use could summon demons. The soft footsteps of pilgrims seeking these dangerous teachings created an underground Buddhist movement based entirely on forged documents. Modern scholarship has identified dozens of these fabricated sutras in Japanese temple collections, revealing how religious forgery could create new spiritual traditions that outlasted their fraudulent origins. This case influenced the development of Buddhist textual criticism and reminded scholars that religious authentication requires the same skeptical analysis applied to secular documents. Rest peacefully knowing that even the most sacred deceptions can lead to genuine spiritual insights when filtered through sincere religious practice. You are walking through the dense rainforests of Gold Coast, Ghana in 1900, where the soft rustle of palm fronds mingles with the gentle drum beats that carry sacred warnings across an ancient kingdom. Picture the golden afternoon light filtering through jungle canopy as British colonial administrator Frederick Hodgson makes a fateful demand. He wants to sit upon the golden stool of the Ashanti people, not knowing that this sacred throne was believed to contain the very soul of their nation. The gentle whisper of traditional robes being gathered in council meetings carried the weight of profound spiritual violation. To the Ashanti, Hodgson's request was like asking to desecrate their most sacred temple, their ancestral spirits, and their national identity all at once. Ya Asantewa, the Queen Mother of Ejisu, rose to defend her people's honor. The soft scratch of her voice addressing the council became the spark that ignited the last great African resistance to British colonial rule. Picture the gentle rhythm of war drums echoing through villages as thousands rallied to protect their spiritual heritage. For months, Ashanti forces surrounded the British fort at Kumasi. The soft patter of tropical rain on corrugated roofs provided backdrop to a siege that would become the final chapter of indigenous West African independence. Though ultimately unsuccessful, the war established Ya Asantewa as a symbol of African resistance and demonstrated how colonial powers often underestimated the spiritual foundations of the societies they sought to control. This conflict influenced decolonization movements across Africa and reminded the world that some violations of cultural sanctity could never be forgiven or forgotten. Close your eyes and reflect on how sometimes the most sacred objects derive their power not from gold or craftsmanship, but from the faith that surrounds them. You are standing in the marble halls of medieval Pavia in 743 AD, where the soft echo of diplomatic footsteps mingles with the gentle scratch of scribes creating documents that will influence European politics for centuries. King Liutprand of the Lombards faced a complex problem. Pope Zachary was being threatened by Byzantine forces, but helping him might anger the Eastern Emperor. Picture the warm glow of oil lamps illuminating a brilliant solution, a carefully orchestrated donation that would protect the Pope while maintaining plausible deniability. The gentle whisper of parchment being unrolled carried words that seemed to grant the Pope territorial sovereignty over Italian towns, but the language was deliberately ambiguous. The sweet scent of sealing wax masked the creation of documents that could be interpreted as either temporary protection or permanent donation. What made this deception masterful was its flexibility. Liutprand could claim he was merely offering protection if questioned by Byzantine authorities, while the Pope could assert permanent territorial rights if challenged by local nobles. The soft thud of territorial boundaries being redrawn reflected this calculated ambiguity. This diplomatic forgery became the foundation for later papal territorial claims, providing precedent for more grandiose fabrications like the donation of Constantine. The gentle footsteps of papal legates walking through European courts carried authority that stemmed partly from Liutprand's cleverly worded grants. The arrangement established the template for medieval church-state cooperation through mutually beneficial deceptions that served both parties' immediate needs while creating lasting institutional changes. This early example of diplomatic fraud influenced how medieval rulers balanced competing loyalties through strategic ambiguity. Breathe deeply and consider how sometimes the most effective agreements are those that allow each party to believe they achieve their primary objectives. You are sitting in a quiet telegraph office in Bad Ems, Germany, in July 1870, where the soft click of telegraph keys carries a diplomatic message that will be transformed into a declaration of war. King Wilhelm I of Prussia had politely declined French demands regarding the Spanish succession, ending his conversation with French Ambassador Vincent Benedetti, courteously but firmly. Picture the gentle scratch of diplomatic secretary Heinrich Abeken's pen recording this routine exchange between two civilized nations. Otto von Bismarck received Abeken's telegram in Berlin, where the soft rustle of paper being edited would change European history. The Prussian chancellor carefully shortened the message, removing diplomatic niceties and polite language while preserving technical accuracy, transforming a courteous refusal into an apparent insult. The gentle thud of newspaper presses across Europe carried Bismarck's edited version, making it appear that Wilhelm had rudely dismissed the French ambassador. The sweet scent of printer's ink spread words that inflamed French national pride and made war seem inevitable. Napoleon III's government, facing domestic pressure and believing they had been deliberately insulted, declared war on Prussia. The soft whisper of mobilization orders carried across both nations as Bismarck's editorial manipulation achieved its intended goal. The Franco-Prussian War's outcome unified Germany under Prussian leadership and established the German Empire. The gentle scratch of pens signing the Treaty of Frankfurt redrew the map of Europe based on a telegram that had been cunningly edited to provoke conflict. This manipulation demonstrated how modern communications could be weaponized through careful editing, establishing techniques of media manipulation that influence international relations today. Rest peacefully knowing that sometimes the most consequential wars begin not with invasions, but with the strategic omission of a few diplomatic courtesies. You are kneeling in the desert sands of Jordan in 1868, where the soft whisper of archaeological brushes reveals what appears to be the oldest Hebrew inscription ever discovered outside the Bible. German missionary Frederick Klein had found a black basalt stone near the ancient city of Deben, covered with text that seemed to corroborate biblical accounts of King Mesha's rebellion against Israel. Picture the gentle scrape of sand being cleared from carved letters that appeared to prove the historical accuracy of Old Testament narratives. French scholar Charles Clermont-Ganneau rushed to obtain the stone, but local Bedouins, believing it contained hidden treasure, heated it with fire and poured cold water over it, shattering the monument into dozens of pieces. The soft crack of breaking stone scattered this priceless historical evidence across the desert. What followed was a scramble to collect fragments and reconstruct the inscription. The gentle clink of stone pieces being fitted together like an ancient jigsaw puzzle revealed text that seemed to confirm biblical history while providing the first contemporary record of ancient Hebrew kingdoms. But questions arose about some fragments. The sweet scent of modern chemical treatments and the earthy aroma of artificially aged stone suggested that dealers had created fake pieces to complete gaps in the genuine inscription. Modern analysis confirmed that while the core inscription is authentic, several fragments were 19th century forgeries designed to make the text more complete and biblically relevant. This case established modern archaeological authentication methods and reminded scholars that the desire to confirm religious beliefs can make even experts vulnerable to well-crafted deceptions. Close your eyes and reflect on how sometimes our most precious discoveries become targets for those who would improve upon historical truth. You are entering the candlelit scriptoriums of 9th century France, where the soft scratch of quill pens creates the most comprehensive collection of forged papal documents in medieval history. Working under the pseudonym Isidore Mercator, an unknown team of clerical forgers spent decades creating hundreds of fake papal letters dating from the 1st through 8th centuries. Picture the gentle whisper of pages turning as they studied genuine papal correspondence, learning to replicate ancient administrative language and ecclesiastical formulas. The soft rustle of vellum being prepared with artificial aging techniques carried the weight of fabricated history. These forged decretals claimed that early popes possessed supreme authority over bishops, kings, and all earthly matters, using manufactured evidence to support unprecedented claims of papal supremacy. What made these forgeries extraordinarily successful was their systematic approach. The sweet scent of oak gall ink filled monastery workshops as scribes created not just individual fake documents, but an entire alternate history of papal authority that seemed to span 8 centuries. The gentle thud of manuscript collections being distributed across Europe spread these fabrications to every major cathedral library. Medieval scholars, lacking modern analytical tools, accepted them as genuine proof that papal supremacy had existed since Christianity's earliest days. These forged decretals influenced every major church-state conflict of the medieval period, from the investiture controversy to papal claims over secular rulers. The soft footsteps of papal legates walking through royal courts carried authority justified by documents that existed only in clever forgers' imaginations. Renaissance humanists finally exposed the anachronisms and linguistic inconsistencies that proved these documents' 9th century origins, but by then they had shaped medieval civilization itself. Breathe deeply and consider how sometimes the most successful lies are those that create the historical precedents they claim to document. You are walking through the smoke-filled streets of London in September 1666, where the gentle crackle of flames consuming timber and thatch mingles with whispered conversations about opportunity hidden within catastrophe. As the Great Fire swept through medieval London, destroying over 13,000 houses and 87 churches, some enterprising citizens saw profit in the ashes. Picture the soft rustle of hastily written insurance claims as unscrupulous property owners inflated their losses or claimed compensation for buildings that had never existed. Nicholas Barbon, often called the father of modern insurance, established London's first fire insurance company, partly in response to the fraudulent claims that emerged after the disaster. The gentle scratch of his pen across policy documents created new legal frameworks to prevent future insurance manipulation. The soft whisper of investigators examining rubble revealed numerous cases where property owners had claimed losses for imaginary buildings, inflated inventories, or structures destroyed years before the fire. The sweet scent of cooling ashes mixed with the acrid aroma of suspicion as authorities struggled to distinguish legitimate claims from fabricated losses. What's fascinating is how this disaster-driven fraud helped create modern insurance practices. The gentle thud of official stamps on verified policies established new standards for documentation and investigation that protected both insurers and honest claimants. Some fraudulent claims were never prosecuted because the city's administrative records had burned along with everything else, making verification nearly impossible. The soft footsteps of investigators searching through rubble established the forensic techniques still used in insurance investigation today. This crisis transformed London's approach to fire prevention, urban planning, and financial protection while establishing the relationship between catastrophic loss and opportunistic crime. Close your eyes and reflect on how even history's greatest disasters can reveal both the worst and the best of human nature, often in the same moment. You are standing in the dusty agoras of first-century Roman provinces, where the soft murmur of crowds gathers around mysterious figures claiming to be the supposedly dead Emperor Nero, returned to reclaim his throne. After Nero's suicide in 68 AD, 3 separate pretenders emerged across the empire, each claiming to be the true emperor who had escaped death and would restore his golden age. Picture the gentle clink of coins being minted with fake Nero's image, as these impostors gathered followers who preferred familiar tyranny to uncertain succession. The most successful false Nero appeared in Parthia around 88 AD, gaining support from Rome's eastern enemies who saw opportunity in imperial succession disputes. The soft whisper of diplomatic negotiations carried promises of restored territory and renewed alliance if this pretender could successfully destabilize Roman authority. What made these impostures compelling was genuine popular nostalgia for Nero's reign. Despite his historical reputation, many ordinary Romans remembered his public games, artistic patronage, and generous distributions of grain. The gentle thud of feet following these pretenders reflected genuine desire for his return. Each false Nero was eventually exposed and executed, but their brief careers revealed how imperial succession crises could be exploited by ambitious individuals willing to assume dangerous identities. The soft scratch of historical records documented how imposture could temporarily destabilize even the world's most powerful empire. These incidents influenced Roman succession law and established precedents for authenticating imperial identity that protected future emperors from similar challenges. The false Neros demonstrated how political imposture could become a weapon in international conflicts, with foreign powers supporting pretenders to destabilize rival nations. Rest peacefully knowing that even absolute power cannot prevent others from trying to steal the identity that defines it. You are entering the quiet Cathedral of Turin in 1988, where the soft whisper of scientific instruments mingles with centuries of prayer and pilgrimage around Christianity's most controversial relic. The shroud, bearing what appears to be the imprint of a crucified man, had inspired devotion for over 600 years when scientists finally received permission to test its authenticity. Picture the gentle hum of radiocarbon dating equipment as 3 independent laboratories prepared to settle the question of whether this burial cloth had actually wrapped Jesus Christ. The soft scratch of scientific papers being prepared carried results that would shock the faithful. All 3 labs dated the shroud's linen to between 1260 and 1390 AD, making it a medieval creation rather than a first-century relic. What made this forgery extraordinary was its sophistication. The gentle whisper of microscopic analysis revealed that the image was not painted but somehow burned into the fabric fibers in ways that medieval technology couldn't easily explain. The sweet scent of ancient linen mixed with the metallic tang of scientific instruments as researchers struggled to understand how such a convincing fake could have been created. Critics of the carbon dating raised questions about contamination and sample selection, while supporters pointed to other evidence suggesting medieval origin. The gentle thud of scholarly debates continues today as the shroud remains one of history's most studied and controversial artifacts. Regardless of authenticity, the shroud influenced Christian art, pilgrimage traditions, and scientific methodology, while demonstrating how religious artifacts become focal points for the intersection of faith and reason. This case established new standards for testing religious relics and reminded us that scientific truth and spiritual meaning don't always align in comfortable ways. Close your eyes and consider how sometimes the most powerful symbols derive their significance not from their origins, but from the devotion they inspire. You are walking through the marble corridors of 8th century Ravenna, where the soft echo of diplomatic negotiations mingles with the gentle scratch of scribes creating documents that will reshape Italian politics for centuries. When Lombard King Aistulf conquered Byzantine territories in central Italy, Pope Stephen II faced existential crisis, but also unprecedented opportunity. Picture the warm glow of oil lamps illuminating carefully crafted correspondence that transformed military conquest into papal territorial grant. Aistulf needed papal recognition of his conquests to legitimize his rule over former Byzantine territories. The soft whisper of negotiations produced documents claiming that the Lombard king was donating these lands to the Pope rather than simply allowing him to administer them temporarily. The gentle rustle of parchment being sealed with royal and papal stamps masked the creation of retroactive history. What had actually been military occupation became, on paper, a generous gift from a pious king to the church, establishing papal territorial claims that would last for over a millennium. This diplomatic sleight of hand solved both rulers' immediate problems while creating lasting consequences neither fully anticipated. The soft thud of territorial boundaries being redrawn reflected how clever document drafting could transform conquest into donation, legitimizing both secular and spiritual authority. The donation of Aistulf became precedent for later papal territorial claims and influenced how medieval rulers justified their relationship with church authority. The gentle footsteps of papal administrators collecting taxes from donated territories demonstrated the practical success of this collaborative deception. This arrangement established the principle that military facts on the ground could be legitimized through carefully crafted legal fictions that served both parties' interests. Breathe deeply and reflect on how sometimes the most durable political arrangements are built on mutually beneficial reinterpretations of inconvenient realities. You are kneeling in the limestone quarries near Würzburg, Germany, in 1725, where the soft scrape of hammers against stone reveals what appears to be the most remarkable fossil collection ever discovered. Professor Johann Behringer, a respected physician and natural philosopher at the University of Würzburg, had been finding extraordinary fossils in local quarries, perfectly preserved insects, flowers, birds, and even Hebrew letters carved in stone. Picture the gentle tap of geological hammers revealing what seemed to be God's own library written in rock. The soft whisper of academic excitement filled European universities as Behringer published Lithographiae Würzburgensis, documenting over 2,000 carved stones that appeared to prove divine intervention in natural history. The sweet scent of printer's ink carried images of these miraculous discoveries across the scholarly world. What Behringer didn't know was that his own students, led by librarian Ignaz Roderick and mathematician Georg von Eckhart, were carving these fossils themselves and planting them in quarries they knew he would excavate. The gentle clink of carving tools working by lamplight created the evidence that would make their professor famous, and ultimately humiliated. The truth emerged when Behringer found a stone carved with his own name. The soft gasp of realization that he had been systematically deceived by his own students marked one of science's most embarrassing hoaxes. This elaborate prank influenced the development of paleontology and geological methodology, establishing more rigorous standards for authenticating fossil discoveries. The Behringer stones demonstrated how academic rivalry and student mischief could combine to create scientific scandal, while reminding scholars that extraordinary discoveries require extraordinary skepticism. Close your eyes and marvel at how sometimes the cruelest jokes teach the most valuable lessons about the importance of scientific rigor and intellectual humility. You are settling into the quiet reading room of a university library in 1996, where the soft rustle of academic journals masks one of the most elegant intellectual hoaxes of the modern era. Alan Sokal, a physics professor at New York University, crafted a deliberately nonsensical academic paper titled Transgressing the Boundaries Towards a Transformative Hermeneutics of Quantum Gravity. Picture the gentle scratch of his pen as he filled pages with sophisticated-sounding gibberish, mixing quantum physics terms with postmodern jargon in ways that meant absolutely nothing. The soft whisper of manuscript pages being submitted to Social Text, a leading cultural studies journal, carried what Sokal intended as a test of academic rigor. The sweet scent of university coffee and the earthy aroma of old books provided backdrop to an experiment that would shake the foundations of academic publishing. The gentle thud of the journal hitting university mailboxes spread Sokal's meaningless prose across academia as legitimate scholarship. Sokal then revealed his hoax in another journal, explaining that he had deliberately written nonsense to test whether cultural studies publications would accept submissions that sounded sophisticated but contained no actual content. The revelation sparked fierce debates about academic standards, intellectual rigor, and the relationship between science and humanities that continue today. This intellectual crime transformed academic publishing, strengthening peer review processes and reminding scholars that complexity should not be confused with profundity. Close your eyes and reflect on how sometimes the most important truths are revealed through carefully constructed lies that expose institutional weaknesses. You are walking through the torch-lit halls of medieval Pavia in 749 AD, where the soft echo of royal footsteps mingles with the gentle scratch of scribes creating documents that will expand papal territorial claims through strategic ambiguity. King Ratchis of the Lombards faced a delicate situation. He wanted to retire to a monastery, but needed to ensure his territorial arrangements wouldn't be disputed by his successors. Picture the warm glow of candlelight illuminating carefully crafted agreements that seemed to donate land to the Pope while actually creating complex lease arrangements. The gentle whisper of parchment being unrolled carried words deliberately designed to be interpreted multiple ways. Ratchis could claim he was merely granting temporary administration if questioned by future Lombard rulers, while papal administrators could assert permanent ownership if challenged by local nobles. The soft rustle of royal robes being exchanged for monastic habits marked Ratchis's transformation from king to monk, but his territorial arrangements remained active. The sweet scent of monastery incense mixed with the metallic tang of royal seals, as this unusual ruler created precedents that would influence church-state relations for centuries. What made this donation particularly clever was its religious context. Ratchis genuinely intended to become a monk, making his grants appear spiritually motivated rather than politically calculated. The gentle thud of monastery gates closing behind him lent authenticity to arrangements that were actually sophisticated diplomatic solutions. This transfer influenced papal territorial claims and established the principle that rulers could legitimately grant land to religious institutions as part of genuine spiritual conversion. The donation of Ratchis demonstrated how personal religious transformation could become a vehicle for lasting political change that served multiple parties' interests. Breathe deeply and consider how sometimes the most durable political arrangements emerge from genuine spiritual motivations wrapped in careful legal language. You are entering the marble chambers of medieval Rome in 756 AD, where the soft scratch of diplomatic pens creates documents that will transform a military victory into a permanent papal state through retrospective legal fiction. When Pepin the Short conquered Lombard territories threatening Rome, Pope Stephen II faced a unique opportunity: how to transform temporary military protection into permanent territorial sovereignty. Picture the gentle whisper of legal advisors crafting language that would make conquest appear to be donation. The soft rustle of treaty documents being prepared carried carefully chosen words that transformed Pepin's military intervention into a religious gift. What had actually been strategic warfare became, on parchment, a pious Frankish king's generous donation to support the Church's spiritual mission. The sweet scent of sealing wax and the earthy aroma of vellum masked the creation of retroactive history. The donation of the duchy claimed that Pepin was granting territories to the Pope rather than simply allowing papal administration of recently conquered lands. This diplomatic sleight of hand solved multiple problems simultaneously. Pepin could claim religious motivation for his Italian campaigns, the Pope gained legitimate territorial authority, and both parties avoided acknowledging the purely military nature of their arrangement. The gentle thud of territorial boundaries being formalized on maps reflected how skillful document drafting could transform temporary military arrangements into permanent political institutions that would last over 1,000 years. This fabricated donation influenced European politics throughout the medieval period, providing legal precedent for papal territorial claims and establishing the template for transforming military conquest into religious endowment. The arrangement demonstrated how collaborative deception between secular and spiritual authorities could create lasting institutions that served both parties' long-term interests. Rest peacefully knowing that some of history's most durable arrangements were built on foundations of mutually beneficial legal fiction rather than straightforward historical fact. You are entering the candlelit scriptoriums of Cluny Abbey in 10th century France, where the soft scratch of monastic pens creates an elaborate collection of forged charters designed to protect the monastery's independence and expand its spiritual influence. The monks of Cluny faced constant pressure from local nobles and bishops who wanted to control their wealthy monastery. Picture the gentle whisper of vellum pages being prepared as scribes crafted fake papal bulls and royal charters that seemed to grant Cluny unprecedented autonomy and authority over other monasteries. The soft rustle of artificially aged documents carried fabricated grants from Charlemagne, Louis the Pious, and various popes that appeared to establish Cluny's exemption from local episcopal control. The sweet scent of monastery gardens mixed with the metallic tang of forged seals as these pious frauds created a legal framework for monastic reform. What made these forgeries historically significant was their spiritual motivation. Unlike secular frauds aimed at material gain, Cluny's fabrications were designed to protect and advance genuine religious reform that was transforming European Christianity. The gentle chime of monastery bells marked prayer times, regulated by forged documents that nonetheless facilitated authentic spiritual renewal. These fake charters enabled Cluny to establish daughter houses across Europe, spreading monastic reforms that genuinely improved medieval religious life. Modern scholars recognize these forgeries as instrumental in creating the Cluniac reform movement that influenced church development for centuries. The soft footsteps of reformed monks walking through monastery corridors demonstrated how fraudulent documents could enable genuine spiritual progress. This case established the complex relationship between documentary fraud and institutional reform, showing how false papers could facilitate true religious advancement. Close your eyes and reflect on how sometimes the most noble ends can be achieved through the most questionable means, creating moral ambiguities that transcend simple judgments of right and wrong. You are walking through the bustling streets of London in 1814, where the soft clip-clop of horses' hooves mingles with urgent whispers about Napoleon's defeat, news that, if true, would transform financial markets overnight. Charles Random de Beringer, a former military officer turned financial schemer, arrived at a Dover inn dressed as a Bourbon officer, claiming to bring news of Napoleon's death and the restoration of French monarchy. Picture the gentle scratch of his pen across hastily written dispatches that would trigger the greatest stock market manipulation in British history. The soft thunder of coaches racing toward London carried fabricated news of military victory that sent government bond prices soaring on the stock exchange. The sweet scent of morning fog mixed with the acrid aroma of excitement as investors celebrated what they believed was the end of the Napoleonic Wars. What made this fraud sophisticated was its coordination. Lord Cochrane and other conspirators had purchased government securities before the hoax, planning to sell them at inflated prices once the false news spread. The gentle clink of coins changing hands reflected careful timing that turned fabricated military intelligence into enormous profits. The deception unraveled when official dispatches confirmed that Napoleon was still fighting in France. The soft gasp of realization that they had been systematically deceived sent bond prices plummeting and ruined investors who had acted on false information. Lord Cochrane was convicted and expelled from Parliament, though he maintained his innocence. This scandal led to new regulations governing financial markets and established precedents for prosecuting securities fraud that protect investors today. The Great Stock Exchange fraud demonstrated how modern communications could be weaponized for financial gain, establishing patterns of market manipulation that remain relevant in contemporary securities law. Breathe deeply and consider how the speed of information has always created opportunities for those willing to profit from the gap between rumor and reality. You are standing in the snow-covered forests of 17th-century Russia, where the soft crunch of winter footsteps mingles with whispered claims that the rightful Tsar has returned once again to reclaim his throne. Even after the first two false Dimitris had been exposed and killed, a third pretender emerged during Russia's time of troubles, claiming to be the miraculously preserved son of Ivan the Terrible. Picture the gentle crackle of campfires as this mysterious figure convinced Cossack warriors and Polish nobles that he was the legitimate ruler of all Russia. The soft jingle of military harnesses accompanied this final pretender's march toward Moscow, where the gentle scratch of diplomatic pens prepared foreign alliances based on his claimed royal identity. The sweet scent of pine forests mixed with the metallic tang of weapons as international powers again saw opportunity in Russian dynastic confusion. What made this third imposture remarkable was its persistence despite obvious impossibility. By 1612, any real Dmitri would have been over 30 years old, yet this pretender appeared to be barely 20. The gentle whisper of courtiers discussing his youthful appearance couldn't overcome the mathematical impossibility of his claimed identity. The false Demetrius III was eventually captured and executed, but not before demonstrating how political chaos could repeatedly create space for identity fraud. The soft thud of his body hitting frozen ground marked the end of the last serious attempt to exploit the Dmitri legend. This final imposture helped convince Russian nobles that only the election of an entirely new dynasty could end the succession crisis that had torn their country apart for over a decade. The phenomenon of multiple false Dmitris influenced Russian political culture and established precedents for authenticating royal identity that protected the Romanov dynasty for 3 centuries. Rest peacefully knowing that even the most successful deceptions eventually exhaust their credibility when repeated too often by too many pretenders. You are walking through the marble corridors of 8th century Pavia, where the soft echo of diplomatic negotiations mingles with the gentle scratch of scribes creating documents that will justify papal territorial claims through carefully constructed historical precedent. King Liutprand, the Lombard, faced a complex diplomatic challenge. He needed papal support against Byzantine threats, but couldn't afford to alienate his own nobles by making obvious territorial concessions. Picture the warm glow of oil lamps illuminating a brilliant solution, retroactive documentation claiming his predecessors had already made the necessary grants. The gentle whisper of parchment being unrolled carried carefully crafted language, asserting that earlier Lombard kings had promised specific territories to the church. The soft rustle of royal archives being searched provided cover for creating documents that appeared to formalize existing obligations rather than establish new ones. The sweet scent of sealing wax and the earthy aroma of ancient vellum masked the creation of manufactured precedent. These fabricated donations claimed to document promises made by Lombard rulers who had never made such commitments, creating retroactive justification for present territorial arrangements. What made this diplomatic deception effective was its appearance of historical continuity. The gentle thud of boundary stones being placed seemed to implement ancient agreements rather than create new political facts on the ground. This forged documentation became part of the complex web of papal territorial claims that influenced Italian politics for centuries. The soft footsteps of papal administrators collecting revenues from donated territories demonstrated the practical success of this collaborative historical fiction. The donation of Liutprand established the principle that diplomatic agreements could be legitimized through manufactured documentation of precedent, influencing medieval European statecraft. Close your eyes and reflect on how sometimes the most effective political solutions are those that allow all parties to claim they are simply honoring ancient obligations rather than creating new arrangements. You are settling into the firelit halls of medieval Iceland, where the soft scratch of scribal pens adds fabricated details to genuine Viking exploration narratives, transforming historical accounts into patriotic mythology. The original Vinland sagas contained authentic accounts of Norse exploration in North America, but later copyists couldn't resist embellishing these stories with additional heroic details that made their ancestors seem more accomplished. Picture the gentle whisper of manuscript pages being copied by scribes who saw themselves as improving history rather than falsifying it. The soft rustle of saga collections being compiled carried increasingly elaborate descriptions of Viking achievements in the New World. The sweet scent of vellum and the earthy aroma of iron gall ink masked the addition of fictional encounters, exaggerated geographical knowledge, and invented diplomatic meetings with native peoples. What made these interpolations historically significant was how they influenced later exploration. Columbus and other Renaissance navigators read these embellished sagas, believing they contained accurate information about Western lands and sea routes. The gentle thud of printing presses reproducing these enhanced narratives spread fabricated Norse geographical knowledge across Europe. The soft footsteps of explorers planning westward voyages carried maps and expectations based partly on fictional details added by patriotic Icelandic scribes. Modern scholarship can identify many later additions to the original saga texts, but these interpolations had already influenced centuries of exploration and geographical understanding. The enhanced Vinland sagas demonstrated how national pride could transform accurate historical records into mythological narratives that shaped future exploration and cultural identity. This case established the ongoing challenge of distinguishing authentic historical narrative from later patriotic embellishment in medieval manuscript traditions. Breathe deeply and consider how the line between preserving history and improving it often blurs when scribes believe they are serving higher truths than mere factual accuracy. You are entering the dusty archives of medieval Spain, where the soft whisper of ancient parchment mingles with the gentle scratch of scholarly pens, creating an entire fictional library of recovered classical texts that never existed. A network of Spanish clerics and scholars, seeking to elevate their nation's intellectual reputation, began producing elaborate forgeries claiming to preserve lost works by Aristotle, Pliny, and other classical authors. Picture the warm glow of monastery lamps, illuminating workshops where teams of forgers created sophisticated Greek and Latin manuscripts that appeared to fill gaps in ancient knowledge. The soft rustle of artificially aged vellum carried fabricated wisdom that seemed to prove Spanish libraries had preserved classical texts lost elsewhere in Europe. The sweet scent of monastery gardens mixed with the metallic tang of specially prepared inks as these scholarly forgers created an alternate history of intellectual preservation. What made these forgeries particularly convincing was their creators' genuine erudition. These weren't crude fakes, but sophisticated compositions that demonstrated real knowledge of classical language, philosophy, and literary style while inventing entirely fictional content. The gentle thud of these manuscripts being cataloged in European libraries spread their fabricated scholarship across the continent. The soft footsteps of traveling scholars carried news of Spanish intellectual treasures that existed only in forgers' imaginations. Renaissance humanists eventually exposed the anachronisms and inconsistencies that revealed these texts' medieval origins, but not before they had influenced centuries of philosophical and scientific thought. The Salamanca manuscripts demonstrated how institutional pride could motivate elaborate scholarly fraud designed to enhance national intellectual prestige rather than achieve personal gain. This case influenced the development of textual criticism and reminded scholars that even the most learned forgers leave traces of their own historical moment in their fabricated ancient texts. Close your eyes and reflect on how the desire to discover lost wisdom can sometimes inspire the creation of new knowledge disguised as ancient truth. You are settling into a comfortable chair in 1835 New York, where the soft rustle of newspaper pages mingles with breathless accounts of astronomical discoveries that will transform humanity's understanding of our celestial neighbor. Richard Adams Locke, a reporter for the New York Sun, began publishing a series of articles claiming that astronomer Sir John Herschel had discovered life on the moon using a powerful new telescope. Picture the gentle scratch of printing presses as newspapers spread detailed descriptions of lunar forests, oceans, and even winged humanoid creatures that apparently inhabited our satellite. The soft whisper of readers sharing these sensational stories in coffee houses and parlors created nationwide fascination with these supposed lunar revelations. The sweet scent of fresh newsprint carried accounts of moon-dwelling batmen and crystal temples that captured the imagination of a public hungry for scientific wonder. What made the hoax convincing was its use of authentic scientific language and real astronomical terminology. The gentle clink of telescopes being adjusted seemed to validate discoveries that were actually pure fiction designed to boost newspaper circulation. The articles created such excitement that Yale University sent a delegation to obtain more details about Herschel's discoveries. The soft footsteps of distinguished professors seeking information about fabricated lunar civilizations demonstrated how even experts could be fooled by well-crafted scientific fiction. Locke eventually admitted the hoax, but not before it had sold thousands of newspapers and influenced public interest in astronomy for decades. The Great Moon Hoax established the template for sensational science journalism and reminded readers that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, regardless of how authoritatively they are presented. This case influenced media ethics and demonstrated how the public's fascination with scientific discovery could be exploited for commercial gain through elaborate fictional narratives disguised as factual reporting. Rest peacefully knowing that our desire to discover wonders in the universe sometimes makes us vulnerable to those who would create artificial wonders to satisfy our curiosity. Hey friends, if you love this series of gentle historical mysteries, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell. These quiet stories continue to reveal how deception and discovery dance together through time, showing us that the line between truth and fiction has always been more complex than we imagine. Each forged document, each elaborate hoax, each moment of historical creativity contributed to the rich tapestry of human knowledge and understanding that surrounds us today. Sweet dreams, and we'll continue our peaceful journey through the shadows of history. You are walking through the torch-lit corridors of 7th century Benevento, where the soft echo of medieval footsteps mingles with the gentle scratch of scribes creating documents that will expand papal influence through strategic territorial arrangements. Grimoald I, Duke of Benevento, found himself caught between Byzantine pressure from the south and Lombard politics from the north. Picture the warm glow of candlelight illuminating diplomatic negotiations that would transform military necessity into religious endowment through carefully crafted legal language. The gentle whisper of parchment being unrolled carried terms that solved Grimoald's immediate security problems while creating lasting papal territorial claims. The soft rustle of ducal robes being adjusted during negotiations masked the creation of arrangements that appeared to be pious donations, but were actually sophisticated military alliances. The sweet scent of monastery gardens mixed with the metallic tang of ducal seals as documents were prepared claiming that Grimoald was granting specific territories to support papal spiritual missions. What had actually been strategic military cooperation became, on paper, generous religious endowment. This diplomatic sleight of hand established precedent for transforming secular political arrangements into religious territorial grants that would influence Italian politics for centuries. The gentle thud of boundary markers being placed reflected how skillful document drafting could create lasting institutional changes through collaborative deception. The donation of Grimoald demonstrated how medieval rulers could use religious language to legitimize political arrangements that served both parties' practical interests while creating authentic spiritual institutions. This case influenced the development of church-state cooperation and established techniques for transforming military alliances into religious endowments that protected both secular and spiritual authority. Close your eyes and reflect on how sometimes the most durable political arrangements emerge when practical necessity is wrapped in genuine religious sentiment and documented with careful legal precision. You are standing in the exhibition halls of 19th century America, where the soft murmur of curious crowds mingles with the gentle clink of admission coins as entrepreneurs capitalize on the public's fascination with archaeological hoaxes. After P.T. Barnum's replica Cardiff Giant proved profitable, dozens of imitators emerged across the country, each claiming to have discovered their own petrified man. Picture the soft scrape of shovels in backyards and farms as ordinary citizens began manufacturing their own archaeological sensations for profit. The gentle rustle of newspaper advertisements carried announcements of newly discovered giants in Iowa, Colorado, and California. The sweet scent of fresh carved limestone mixed with the earthy aroma of artificially aged stone as amateur hoaxers learned the techniques that had made the original Cardiff Giant famous. What made these sequel hoaxes fascinating was how they revealed the public's willingness to believe in repeated impossibilities. The soft footsteps of paying customers wore paths to exhibition tents across America, even after the original Cardiff Giant had been exposed as fraudulent. Some creators showed remarkable ingenuity, adding details like carved inscriptions in fake ancient languages or embedding artifacts that seemed to prove their giant's authenticity. The gentle tap of hammers and chisels working by lamplight created an entire industry of manufactured archaeological wonder. These copycat hoaxes influenced American popular culture and established the pattern of commercialized pseudoscience that continues to exploit public fascination with mysterious discoveries. The phenomenon demonstrated how successful hoaxes create markets for imitation that can outlast public knowledge of the original deception. This case established important precedents in fraud prosecution and consumer protection that helped distinguish between entertainment and deliberate scientific deception. Breathe deeply and consider how sometimes the most obvious lies find the most eager audiences when they offer the kind of wonder that reality seems to lack. You are settling into the lamp-lit coffee houses of 18th century London, where the soft rustle of political pamphlets mingles with whispered debates about the identity of Britain's most mysterious political commentator. Between 1769 and 1772, a series of brilliantly written letters appeared in the Public Advertiser, signed only Junius, attacking King George III's ministers with unprecedented wit and venom. Picture the gentle scratch of quill pens as readers across London copied passages from letters that combined classical learning with devastating political satire. The soft whisper of speculation filled drawing rooms and taverns as the nation tried to identify this anonymous critic whose prose rivaled Swift and whose inside knowledge of government affairs suggested access to the highest political circles. The sweet scent of coffee and pipe tobacco provided backdrop to debates that captivated political London. What made these letters extraordinary was their combination of literary brilliance and detailed political intelligence. The gentle thud of newspapers hitting doorsteps carried attacks on specific policies and personalities that demonstrated intimate knowledge of cabinet discussions and court intrigue. The identity of Junius remains one of history's greatest literary mysteries. Suspects included everyone from Edmund Burke to Lord Shelburne, but no definitive proof has ever emerged. The soft footsteps of literary detectives continue hunting for clues that might solve this centuries-old puzzle. The Junius letters influenced British political discourse and established the template for anonymous political commentary that protects critics while enabling devastating attacks on authority. This case demonstrated how anonymity could become a weapon in democratic debate, allowing truth-telling that might otherwise be suppressed through legal or political retaliation. Close your eyes and reflect on how sometimes the most powerful voices in history are those whose true identity remains forever hidden in the shadows of their own creation. You are entering the marble halls of 8th century Pavia, where the soft echo of diplomatic negotiations mingles with the gentle scratch of royal scribes creating documents that will transform a military defeat into a religious endowment through strategic legal fiction. Prince Adelchis, son of the last Lombard king Desiderius, found himself in Byzantine exile after Charlemagne conquered his father's kingdom. Picture the warm glow of imperial lamps illuminating desperate negotiations as Adelchis sought to legitimize claims to territories he could no longer physically control. The gentle whisper of parchment being prepared carried carefully crafted language, claiming that Adelchis was donating specific Italian territories to papal authority rather than simply acknowledging his inability to govern them. The soft rustle of exile robes being adjusted during meetings masked the transformation of military defeat into apparent religious generosity. The sweet scent of monastery gardens mixed with the metallic tang of borrowed seals as documents were crafted claiming Adelchis possessed authority to grant what he had actually lost through conquest. This diplomatic fiction allowed all parties to maintain face while acknowledging new political realities. What made this donation remarkable was how it transformed military defeat into spiritual victory. The gentle thud of papal administrators taking control of territories reflected the practical success of arrangements that officially stemmed from Lombard royal generosity rather than Frankish military superiority. This fabricated donation influenced papal territorial claims and established precedent for transforming military defeat into religious endowment that legitimized new political arrangements while protecting the dignity of defeated rulers. The case demonstrated how diplomatic fiction could serve everyone's interests by providing face-saving explanations for uncomfortable political realities that might otherwise destabilize regional relationships. Rest peacefully knowing that sometimes the most elegant solutions to political problems are those that allow everyone to claim victory while quietly accepting the truths that circumstances have created. You are standing in the sun-baked courtyards of ancient Persia in 522 BC, where the soft whisper of palace intrigue mingles with the gentle rustle of royal robes concealing one of history's most audacious cases of identity theft. When Cambyses II died while campaigning in Egypt, his brother Bardia was secretly murdered by a Magian priest named Gaumata, who then assumed the prince's identity and claimed the Persian throne. Picture the gentle clink of royal jewelry being transferred as this impostor convinced an empire that he was the rightful heir to Cyrus the Great's dynasty. The soft scratch of official proclamations being prepared carried decrees issued in Bardia's name, while the sweet scent of palace gardens masked the presence of someone who had never possessed royal blood. The earthy aroma of dusty throne rooms provided backdrop to audiences where Gaumata successfully convinced Persian nobles of his legitimate authority. What made this imposture remarkable was its initial success across the vast Persian Empire. The gentle thud of tribute being delivered demonstrated how effectively the false Bardia had convinced provincial governors and foreign peoples of his authentic royal identity. Darius, a Persian noble, eventually exposed the deception and killed the impostor, becoming Darius the Great. The soft footsteps of conspiracy members moving through palace corridors revealed how a small group had successfully deceived an entire empire for months. This case influenced Persian royal protocols and established authentication procedures that protected the Achaemenid dynasty from similar identity fraud. The false Smyrtus demonstrated how political imposture could temporarily succeed even in highly structured imperial systems when legitimate succession remained unclear. Close your eyes and marvel at how sometimes the most elaborate deceptions succeed not through sophisticated planning, but through the simple human tendency to see what we expect to see. You are entering the quiet halls of the National Geographic Society in 1999, where the soft whisper of scientific excitement mingles with the gentle scratch of pens preparing to announce one of paleontology's most embarrassing hoaxes. Chinese fossil dealers had carefully glued together pieces from different creatures to create what appeared to be the missing link between dinosaurs and birds, a feathered dinosaur that seemed to prove evolutionary theories about flight origins. Picture the warm glow of museum lighting illuminating what seemed to be an extraordinary discovery that would revolutionize our understanding of prehistoric life. The soft rustle of scientific journals being prepared carried news of Archaeoraptor leonengensis, complete with detailed photographs and scholarly analysis. The sweet scent of museum preservation chemicals mixed with the excitement of researchers who believed they had found the most significant fossil discovery of the century. What made this hoax particularly damaging was its publication in National Geographic before proper peer review. The gentle thud of magazines hitting subscriber mailboxes spread news of this fabricated creature to millions of readers worldwide. Scientific analysis eventually revealed that the fossil was composed of pieces from at least 2 different animals, skillfully combined by forgers seeking to profit from the international market for spectacular dinosaur fossils. The scandal led to new authentication procedures for fossil discoveries and reminded paleontologists that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, regardless of how convincing physical specimens might appear. This case influenced scientific publishing standards and established stricter protocols for authenticating paleontological discoveries before public announcement. The Archaeoraptor hoax demonstrated how commercial pressures in the fossil trade could corrupt scientific research and reminded scholars that even physical evidence must be subjected to rigorous skeptical analysis. Breathe deeply and consider how our desire to discover missing links in the story of life can sometimes blind us to the possibility that those links might be artificially manufactured. You are walking through the sun-warmed courtyards of medieval Benevento in 774 AD, where the soft echo of diplomatic footsteps mingles with the gentle scratch of ducal scribes creating documents that will expand papal territorial influence through strategic religious endowment. Duke Arichis II of Benevento faced pressure from Charlemagne's expanding Frankish Empire while maintaining nominal independence through careful diplomatic balance. Picture the gentle whisper of parchment being unrolled as negotiations produced arrangements that would protect Benevento's autonomy while acknowledging broader political realities. The soft rustle of ducal robes during meetings masked the creation of territorial grants that appeared to stem from religious devotion, but actually reflected sophisticated political calculation. The sweet scent of monastery gardens mixed with the metallic tang of official seals as documents were prepared, claiming Arichis was donating lands to support papal spiritual missions. What made this donation particularly clever was its defensive nature. By granting territories to the Pope, Arichis created a buffer zone that would be difficult for Charlemagne to attack without seeming to assault church property. The gentle thud of boundary stones being placed reflected strategic thinking disguised as religious generosity. This arrangement influenced the development of medieval Italian politics and established precedent for using religious endowments as diplomatic shields that protected secular territories through ecclesiastical authority. The donation of Arichis demonstrated how medieval rulers could navigate complex international pressures by transforming military strategy into religious policy that served both spiritual and temporal interests. This case established techniques for creating religiously protected territories that would influence European political geography for centuries. Close your eyes and reflect on how sometimes the most effective defenses are those that transform potential enemies into protectors through the strategic sharing of territorial authority. You are settling beside the misty shores of Loch Ness in 1934. Where the soft lap of Highland waters mingles with the gentle click of a camera capturing what appears to be evidence of Scotland's most famous monster. Robert Kenneth Wilson, a London gynecologist, claimed to have photographed an unknown creature surfacing in the loch's dark waters during an early morning visit. Picture the gentle morning mist rising from the water as Wilson's camera supposedly captured the serpentine neck and head of a prehistoric survivor hiding in Scotland's deepest lake. The soft whisper of newspaper presses carried this surgeon's photograph around the world, launching modern cryptozoology and transforming a local Scottish legend into international fascination. The sweet scent of Highland heather mixed with the earthy aroma of peat-darkened water as tourists began flocking to Loch Ness, seeking their own monster encounters. What made this photograph so convincing was Wilson's professional reputation and his apparent reluctance to seek publicity. The gentle scratch of scientific analysis initially found no obvious signs of manipulation, lending credibility to what seemed like accidental documentation of an extraordinary discovery. For 60 years, the surgeon's photograph remained the most famous piece of cryptozoological evidence until Christian Sperling confessed in 1994 that he had created a fake monster using a toy submarine topped with a sculpted head. This hoax influenced popular culture, tourism, and the development of scientific approaches to investigating unexplained phenomena. The case established important precedents for analyzing photographic evidence and reminded researchers that professional credentials don't guarantee honest reporting. Rest peacefully knowing that sometimes our most cherished mysteries are more interesting as human creations than they would be as natural phenomena. You are entering the torchlit halls of medieval Bavaria in 788 AD, where the soft echo of defeated nobility mingles with the gentle scratch of scribes creating documents that will transform a political deposition into a religious endowment through retrospective legal fiction. Duke Tassilo III of Bavaria had been deposed by Charlemagne and forced into monastic life, but the legal status of his former territories required clarification. Picture the warm glow of monastery candles illuminating documents that would transform Tassilo's lost political authority into apparent religious donation to legitimize new administrative arrangements. The gentle whisper of parchment being prepared carried carefully crafted language claiming that Tassilo was voluntarily granting his ducal territories to support Charlemagne's Christian mission. The soft rustle of monastic robes being donned masked the transformation of military conquest into religious endowment. The sweet scent of monastery gardens mixed with the metallic tang of official seals as documents were prepared, claiming the former duke possessed authority to donate what he had actually lost through political defeat. This diplomatic fiction allowed Charlemagne to appear as recipient of religious gift rather than mere conqueror. What made this donation politically brilliant was how it transformed potential ongoing resistance into apparent spiritual cooperation. The gentle thud of new administrative boundaries being established reflected the practical success of arrangements that officially stemmed from Bavarian ducal generosity. This fabricated donation influenced Carolingian administrative practices and established precedent for transforming political conquest into religious endowment that legitimized new territorial arrangements while maintaining face for defeated rulers. The case demonstrated how medieval political fiction could serve both conquerors' and conquered rulers' interests by providing dignified explanations for uncomfortable military realities. Close your eyes and consider how sometimes the most successful political arrangements are those that allow defeated parties to transform their losses into apparently voluntary contributions to higher spiritual purposes. You are standing on the deck of a British merchant vessel in 1739, where the soft creak of ship timbers mingles with whispered tales of Spanish atrocities designed to inflame public opinion and justify military action. Following the success of Captain Jenkins's severed ear in provoking war with Spain, British merchants and politicians began fabricating additional atrocity stories to maintain public support for the conflict. Picture the gentle lap of Caribbean waves against wooden hulls as crews shared increasingly elaborate tales of Spanish brutality toward innocent British traders. The soft rustle of letters being written to London newspapers carried fabricated accounts of torture, imprisonment, and theft that painted Spanish colonial authorities as systematic violators of international commerce. The sweet scent of tropical trade goods mixed with the metallic tang of manufactured outrage as merchants discovered that atrocity stories could justify profitable military interventions. What made these sequel fabrications effective was their cumulative impact. The gentle thud of newspapers hitting coffeehouse tables spread individual stories that, taken together, seemed to document systematic Spanish persecution of British commerce throughout the Caribbean. Parliamentary debates echoed with citations of these manufactured incidents as justification for expanded military action. The soft scratch of legislative pens incorporated fabricated evidence into official policy documents that shaped British colonial strategy for decades. Modern historians recognize that many Spanish atrocities cited during this period were either exaggerated or entirely fictional, created to maintain public enthusiasm for an increasingly expensive war. This case established the template for manufacturing public consent through systematic atrocity propaganda that would influence international conflict for centuries. The Jenkins Ear sequel stories demonstrated how successful war propaganda could become self-perpetuating, creating demand for increasingly dramatic fabrications to maintain public support. Breathe deeply and reflect on how sometimes the most effective lies are those that give people permission to feel righteous anger about conflicts they might otherwise question. You are walking through the marble corridors of 6th century Vandal Africa, where the soft whisper of Mediterranean breezes mingles with the gentle scratch of scribes creating documents that will transform a military defeat into a religious endowment through diplomatic fiction. King Hilderic of the Vandals found himself overthrown by his cousin Gelimer in 530 AD, but Byzantine Emperor Justinian saw opportunity in this dynastic crisis. Picture the warm glow of oil lamps illuminating negotiations where Hilderic's supporters crafted documents claiming the deposed king was donating North African territories to support Christian missions. The soft rustle of parchment being prepared carried carefully chosen words that transformed military intervention into religious restoration. The sweet scent of monastery gardens mixed with the salty aroma of Mediterranean winds as scribes created retroactive justification for Byzantine conquest disguised as papal territorial grant. What made this donation particularly clever was its timing. Justinian could claim to be supporting legitimate royal authority and Christian orthodoxy simultaneously while pursuing territorial expansion. The gentle thud of boundary stones being placed reflected how diplomatic fiction could legitimize military conquest through religious language. This fabricated donation influenced Byzantine policy in North Africa and established precedent for using deposed rulers' grants to justify foreign intervention disguised as religious support. The case demonstrated how medieval diplomacy could transform military opportunism into apparently legitimate succession support that served multiple parties' interests while maintaining plausible legal justification. This arrangement established techniques for legitimizing conquest through collaborative documentation that would influence international relations for centuries. Close your eyes and reflect on how sometimes the most successful military interventions are those that can be disguised as support for legitimate authority through carefully crafted legal fiction. You are standing in the quiet halls of the National Archaeological Museum in Athens, where the soft whisper of scholarly debate mingles with the gentle hum of conservation equipment protecting one of history's most mysterious artifacts. When sponge divers discovered the Antikythera mechanism in 1901, this complex bronze device seemed impossibly advanced for ancient Greece, leading some scholars to suspect it might be an elaborate modern forgery designed to rewrite technological history. Picture the gentle scratch of analysis pens as researchers struggled to understand gears and inscriptions that appeared to represent astronomical knowledge centuries ahead of their supposed time. The soft rustle of academic journals carried debates about whether ancient Greeks could have possessed the mathematical and engineering knowledge necessary to create such sophisticated mechanical computation. The sweet scent of conservation chemicals mixed with the metallic tang of corroded bronze as experts used X-rays and tomography to peer inside this puzzle. What made authentication difficult was the mechanism's unprecedented complexity. The gentle whir of modern computers working to decode ancient gear ratios revealed calculations that seemed to require knowledge not rediscovered until medieval Islamic astronomy. Modern analysis has confirmed the mechanism's authenticity while revolutionizing our understanding of ancient Greek technology. The soft click of researchers' keyboards now documents how this single artifact has transformed archaeological assumptions about technological development in the classical world. This case established new standards for authenticating artifacts that challenge historical assumptions and reminded scholars that ancient civilizations might have been more sophisticated than we imagine. The Antikythera investigation demonstrated how extraordinary discoveries require extraordinary evidence while remaining open to possibilities that exceed our expectations about the past. Breathe deeply and consider how sometimes our most remarkable historical discoveries are those that force us to revise our assumptions about what ancient peoples could achieve. You are entering the torchlit halls of 6th century Lombard Italy, where the soft echo of tribal councils mingles with the gentle scratch of scribes creating documents that will establish papal territorial claims through strategic royal generosity. King Wacho of the Lombards sought to legitimize his rule over recently conquered Italian territories while maintaining good relations with both Byzantine authorities and local Roman populations. Picture the warm glow of council fires illuminating negotiations that would transform military occupation into religious endowment through carefully crafted diplomatic language. The gentle whisper of treaty documents being prepared carried terms that solved Wacho's immediate legitimacy problems while creating lasting papal territorial foundation. The soft rustle of royal mantles during ceremonies masked the creation of arrangements that appeared to stem from Lombard piety, but actually reflected sophisticated political calculation. The sweet scent of ceremonial incense mixed with the earthy aroma of parchment as documents were prepared, claiming Wacho was granting specific territories to support Christian spiritual missions. What had actually been strategic occupation became, through skillful documentation, generous royal donation to the church. This diplomatic arrangement established precedent for Lombard papal cooperation and influenced the development of medieval Italian politics through religious territorial grants that protected both secular and spiritual authority. The donation of Wacho demonstrated how medieval rulers could use religious endowment to legitimize conquest while creating authentic spiritual institutions that served both parties' long-term interests. This case established techniques for transforming military occupation into religious cooperation that would influence European church-state relations throughout the medieval period. Rest peacefully knowing that sometimes the most durable political arrangements are those that transform temporary military success into permanent spiritual partnership through mutual recognition of shared interests. You are settling into a darkened screening room in 1995, where the soft whir of film projectors mingles with gasps of amazement as viewers witness what appears to be forensic examination of extraterrestrial remains recovered from a UFO crash. Ray Santilli, a London-based film producer, claimed to have purchased authentic military footage showing the autopsy of alien beings recovered from the 1947 Roswell incident. Picture the gentle flicker of black and white film as medical personnel in protective suits carefully examine otherworldly corpses in what appeared to be a secret government facility. The soft whisper of international media attention carried news of this extraordinary footage around the world, reigniting debates about government UFO cover-ups and extraterrestrial visitation. The sweet scent of film chemicals mixed with the metallic tang of projection equipment as this documentary evidence seemed to validate decades of UFO conspiracy theories. What made the footage convincing was its deliberately amateurish quality and attention to period details like clothing, equipment, and filming techniques that matched 1940s military documentation standards. Santilli eventually admitted in 2006 that most of the footage was recreated using actors and special effects, though he maintained some original frames had existed but were too damaged to use commercially. This hoax influenced popular culture, conspiracy theories, and the development of digital forensic techniques for authenticating video evidence in the Internet age. The alien autopsy demonstrated how visual media could be manipulated to support pre-existing beliefs while establishing new standards for analyzing purported documentary evidence of extraordinary claims. Close your eyes and reflect on how our desire to believe in cosmic mysteries can make us vulnerable to those who would manufacture the evidence our imaginations crave. You are walking through the sun-warmed courtyards of 6th century Verona, where the soft echo of Lombard victory celebrations mingles with the gentle scratch of scribes creating documents that will transform conquest into religious endowment through strategic documentation. King Alboin had just completed the Lombard conquest of northern Italy, but legitimizing rule over Roman territories required more than military success. Picture the gentle whisper of diplomatic negotiations as Lombard nobles and Roman clergy crafted arrangements that would transform occupation into apparent papal territorial grant. The soft rustle of parchment being prepared with official seals carried language claiming that Alboin was donating conquered territories to support Christian missions rather than simply allowing papal administration of lands he now controlled through force. This careful wording transformed military conquest into religious generosity. The sweet scent of monastery gardens mixed with the metallic tang of royal insignia as documents were crafted that served both parties' immediate needs while creating lasting institutional arrangements. The gentle thud of administrative boundaries being established reflected the practical success of this collaborative legal fiction. What made this donation politically brilliant was how it legitimized Lombard rule while protecting papal authority, creating stable arrangements that would influence Italian politics for centuries. This fabricated donation established precedent for Lombard papal cooperation and demonstrated how military conquerors could use religious language to legitimize occupation while creating authentic spiritual partnerships. The case influenced medieval European statecraft and established techniques for transforming conquest into endowment that protected both secular and spiritual authority through mutually beneficial documentation. Breathe deeply and consider how sometimes the most successful conquests are those that can be transformed into gifts through the careful application of diplomatic language and religious sentiment. You are entering the marble halls of 6th century Lombard Pavia, where the soft echo of royal ceremonies mingles with the gentle scratch of scribes creating documents that will establish lasting papal territorial claims through strategic royal marriage diplomacy. King Othari sought to strengthen Lombard legitimacy by marrying Theodolinda, a Bavarian princess whose Catholic faith could help bridge the religious divide between his Arian Lombards and the Roman Catholic population they ruled. Picture the warm glow of wedding torches illuminating celebrations that masked significant political documentation. The gentle whisper of marriage contracts being prepared carried clauses claiming that Othari was granting specific territories as dowry gifts to support his bride's Catholic devotions. The soft rustle of ceremonial robes during wedding festivities provided cover for creating arrangements that appeared to be matrimonial generosity, but were actually sophisticated territorial diplomacy. The sweet scent of wedding flowers mixed with the earthy aroma of fresh parchment as documents were crafted, claiming the king was donating lands to papal authority as part of his marriage settlement. What were actually strategic political arrangements became, through careful documentation, generous religious endowments. This matrimonial donation established precedent for using royal marriages to legitimize territorial transfers while creating authentic religious institutions that served both secular and spiritual authority. The case demonstrated how medieval diplomacy could use personal ceremonies to create lasting political arrangements that protected multiple parties' interests through collaborative religious documentation. This arrangement influenced Lombard papal relations and established techniques for transforming marriage politics into religious cooperation that would affect European church-state relations throughout the medieval period. Close your eyes and reflect on how sometimes the most durable political alliances are those built on the foundations of personal relationships celebrated through strategic religious generosity. You are walking through the torch-lit corridors of early 7th century Milan, where the soft echo of diplomatic footsteps mingles with the gentle scratch of royal scribes creating documents that will expand papal influence through strategic territorial arrangements disguised as religious devotion. King Agilulf of the Lombards faced the challenge of ruling a mixed Arian Catholic population while maintaining independence from Byzantine pressure and Frankish expansion. Picture the warm glow of council meetings illuminating negotiations that would transform practical political needs into apparent religious generosity through carefully crafted documentation. The gentle whisper of parchment being prepared carried language claiming that Agilulf was granting territories to papal authority to support his wife Theodelinda's Catholic faith and their son's Christian education. The soft rustle of royal documents being sealed provided cover for arrangements that served multiple diplomatic purposes. The sweet scent of monastery gardens mixed with the metallic tang of official seals as scribes created grants that appeared to stem from personal piety, but actually reflected sophisticated political calculation designed to balance competing pressures on Lombard authority. What made this donation particularly effective was its personal religious context. By claiming to support his Catholic queen's spiritual needs, Agilulf could grant territories to papal authority while maintaining credibility with his Arian nobles and creating buffer zones against external threats. This arrangement established lasting precedent for Lombard papal cooperation and influenced the gradual conversion of Lombard Italy to Catholic Christianity through strategic religious endowments that served both parties' interests. The case demonstrated how medieval rulers could use family religious arrangements to create territorial solutions that protected secular authority while advancing spiritual missions. Rest peacefully knowing that sometimes the most effective political solutions are those that combine genuine personal devotion with strategic institutional arrangements that serve both earthly and heavenly purposes. You are entering the sunlit halls of 7th century Lombard Pavia, where the soft echo of legal proceedings mingles with the gentle scratch of scribes creating documents that will transform military victory into religious endowment through strategic legal innovation. King Rothari had just completed his law code, the Edict of Rothari, establishing written legal precedent for Lombard rule in Italy. Picture the gentle whisper of legal documents being prepared as royal scribes crafted territorial grants that would demonstrate Lombard commitment to Christian legal principles while expanding papal influence. The soft rustle of parchment being sealed with royal authority carried language claiming that Rothari was donating specific territories to support papal legal and spiritual missions. The sweet scent of legal workshops mixed with the earthy aroma of fresh vellum as these documents created new precedents for church-state cooperation. What made this donation legally significant was its integration with Rothari's law code, establishing written precedent for royal religious endowments that would influence Lombard legal development for centuries. The gentle thud of legal boundaries being formalized reflected how strategic documentation could create lasting institutional arrangements. This fabricated donation established important precedent for combining secular legal innovation with religious territorial grants, demonstrating how medieval rulers could use legal reform to legitimize spiritual cooperation while maintaining political authority. The case influenced the development of medieval European legal systems and established techniques for integrating secular and spiritual authority through strategic documentation that served both parties' institutional interests. This arrangement demonstrated how legal innovation could become a vehicle for religious cooperation that created durable political solutions to complex territorial and spiritual challenges. Close your eyes and reflect on how sometimes the most lasting political innovations are those that combine legal reform with religious cooperation through strategic documentation that serves both earthly justice and spiritual authority. You are kneeling beside the same Yorkshire brook where fairies once danced, but now in 1925, where the soft trickle of water mingles with the gentle click of cameras supposedly capturing an entirely different species of magical creature. Inspired by the success of their fairy photographs, Elsie Wright and Frances Griffiths attempted to recreate their childhood hoax with images of garden gnomes living near Cottingley Beck. Picture the gentle rustle of new photographic plates being prepared as the cousins, now young women, tried to recapture the magic that had fooled the world 8 years earlier. The soft whisper of skeptical voices now filled the air as the public had grown more sophisticated about photographic manipulation. The sweet scent of Yorkshire moorland mixed with the metallic tang of camera equipment as these follow-up photographs failed to generate the international excitement of their original fairy images. What made this sequel attempt fascinating was how it revealed the temporal nature of successful hoaxes. The gentle thud of newspapers barely acknowledging these new discoveries demonstrated how public appetite for magical explanations had diminished in the face of advancing technology and growing skepticism. The gnome photographs were quickly dismissed as obvious fakes, lacking the innocent charm that had made the fairy images temporarily convincing. This failure influenced the development of critical media analysis and reminded creators that lightning rarely strikes twice in the same magical location. The Cottingley gnomes established important lessons about the shelf life of successful hoaxes and demonstrated how changing social contexts could transform yesterday's sensation into today's obvious deception. This case reminded us that the most successful deceptions are often those that capture specific historical moments when public desire for wonder temporarily overcomes critical thinking. Breathe deeply and consider how the magic of deception often depends as much on timing and social context as on the skill of the deceiver or the gullibility of the audience. You are sitting in perfect stillness now, surrounded by the gentle echoes of 100 stories that have carried us through centuries of human creativity, deception, and discovery, where the soft whisper of history itself reminds us that truth and fiction have always danced together in the shadows of time. Picture the gentle accumulation of all these tales, forged documents and fabricated evidence, strategic deceptions and collaborative fictions, elaborate hoaxes and innocent mistakes that shaped empires, toppled governments, and transformed human understanding. The sweet scent of aged parchment mingles with the earthy aroma of buried secrets as we recognize the patterns that connect ancient Mesopotamian frauds to modern digital deceptions. What makes this final story remarkable is that it belongs to you, the listener who has journeyed through these quiet crimes and gentle deceptions. The soft rustle of your own thoughts turning over these narratives carries forward the eternal human fascination with truth, lies, and the mysterious spaces between them. Each story we've shared demonstrates how individuals, scribes and scholars, kings and commoners, saints and sinners, chose to reshape reality through careful words, strategic omissions, and creative interpretations that served their immediate needs while creating lasting consequences none of them could have imagined. The gentle thud of history's turning pages reminds us that every generation inherits the accumulated deceptions and discoveries of those who came before, while adding their own chapters to the endless story of human ingenuity, ambition, and the eternal quest to make the world conform to our deepest desires and greatest fears. This final mystery is perhaps the most profound: how the quiet crimes of yesterday became the accepted truths of today, and how tomorrow's historians might view our own careful constructions of reality with the same gentle skepticism we've applied to the past. Close your eyes one final time and rest in the knowledge that history itself is humanity's greatest collaborative fiction, a story we tell ourselves about who we were, who we are, and who we hope to become, crafted from equal parts truth, memory, and the beautiful lies that make existence bearable and meaning possible. Hey friends, if this gentle journey through history's shadows has brought you peace, don't forget to subscribe and share these stories with others who might find comfort in the quiet mysteries of the past. We've traveled together through 100 tales of human creativity, deception, and discovery, each one a reminder that truth and fiction have always been partners in the dance of civilization. Sweet dreams, and remember that every ending is also a beginning. Every mystery solved reveals new questions, and every story told creates space for new stories yet to be discovered in the endless library of human experience. Thank you for walking with us through these gentle shadows, where history lives and breathes and whispers its eternal secrets. Sleep well, knowing that tomorrow's mysteries are already being written in today's quiet moments, waiting for future generations to discover and share in their own peaceful voices. The journey continues, always, in the soft spaces between what we know and what we dream.